equipment, and then they'll move up more and more and see what they can do. Whether it's even like extra talents or something for your commanders or something like that. Like they are gonna have to look at something.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to actually be creative in these games that do not um, that that does not limit what they think they need to increase. And this is something that, Infinity Kingdom, even though the game I would say is, slightly successful and popular, definitely, not obviously to the scope that some of the other big games are, but that's something that they're basically dealing with right now. And I think when you look at a game like RoK, and I think any game, right, I think having a good understanding of kind of overall mechanics that go into the game, not just something that is, like the average player you may talk to, you start talking about things like game mechanics, and the first thing they usually go to is PvP. And most of the time, when Khan, I'm recording too as well, just in case if he is here. But the thing is that and I'll give just one example, right? I think doing something like a KVK tournament, just to throw one thing out there, is something no kingdom builder has ever done. It's a genius idea if it can be done and implemented appropriately, which it can be. There actually are ways you can do this where you, again, and what's funny is RoK kind of has systems implemented already with the troop kickback that you get from KVKs, right? So depending on the KVK you're in, right, you'll get a percentage kickback or percentage return of dead troops. You could do something almost like what you would consider with like an Ark of Osiris, right, or Osiris League, where you kind of do like these short stint days, like weekends or something like that, where it's kind of like an accelerated KVK, and then basically if you win, you get a percentage troop, like you get a higher percentage troop. If you lose, you get a lower percentage troop return, or maybe you get all troops returned if you win, and it actually lets you get through more of like a bracket style system faster, right, where you're not kind of drawing it out. And you can even do it in a quicker format than that. But something like a KVK tournament would be the dopest thing ever, right? That's like really, if you're thinking about next level, where do you take the meta? Where do you take the long term from where RoK is currently and go? Something like that could easily be a big winner. I think them doing, and I don't know if they do like live commentating for their Osiris League matches. I know some of the YouTubers might do stuff, but as far as them promoting it in a way where you would look at, for those of you who've maybe watched professional, shooter games, or if you watch StarCraft or Counter Strike Global Offensive, right, CS:GO, and you watch how those people shoutcast and do commentating. That's an area that I think RoK could dive into that I don't know if they really have kind of like looked for those types of commentators to kind of promote it on their official stream. Like these are just kind of outside the box ideas that could very much be implemented that will still drive that level of engagement from an audience without having to kind of say, well, hey, we're going to add this in or not. And a good example is them talking about doing something like in that face-to-face dev meeting that they did, where they said, hey, we're considering making archers a true range troop, or siege a true range troop, right? Where now you're kind of getting into more of that like standard triangle type system that you would see in like a traditional RTS game, right? Where this counters this, that counters that, and then this one over here counters this. And that would even be dope, adding a whole new element, because you have to think about it. They already have the free troop movement, so it's almost kind of like the game is in a very infantile state for its real-time strategy when it comes to the actual mechanics and the tactics that we can use. Something like that can provide a whole new level of depth where you don't have to say, well, let's just increase the castle level by 25. And I think things like equipment is pretty standard. I think a lot of other kingdom builders use equipment systems. Now, whether or not they just keep raising the ceiling, that's an entirely different matter. I think you have a point there as far as I don't think anyone would want to see that. But I think if they come out with something, most of the time it's good to try and have whatever they come out with be a near kind of finished or full thought out idea. So they don't think to themselves, hey, now we need to add more onto it later because people are hitting it too fast, right? So it's kind of a good balance that you want to hit. But I definitely think, and like I said, those are just a couple ideas throwing out, but I think that is something to look at. Even just expanding on, how a kingdom is managed. And this is the last thing I'm going to touch on because I know we're already about 10 minutes in, so I appreciate everyone enjoying my philosophical rant here. is something else you could consider is just the way that a kingdom is managed. And this is something I've touched on in a couple of my videos, but it's something that you don't usually hear talked about. Like, at the end of the day, we're playing a kingdom builder. We're not playing a player progression game. We're not playing we're not even to a larger extent playing a war game. We are playing a kingdom builder where the primary focus is really to build and sustain a kingdom. Because if you're not able to sustain a kingdom or even know how to build one, you're not going to retain a player base. And if you don't retain a player base, you have no activity. And if you have no activity, your kingdom is dying or it's dead. And people will just move away from it, right? Then you're just kind of left holding whatever sticks you've collected to attempt to build this campfire that just never really flourished. And so when you just look at the genre and the game in its really most kind of in its most like unfiltered state, that's really what we're playing, because you don't get anything else that the successful kingdoms get, or you don't have the opportunity to dive into those areas if you can't build a good product right from the ground up. So I think that's the challenge, is that, like, and I'll give an example here, right? If they added in, so some of you might remember this back when, depending on how long some of you have been playing, you might remember that for about a few weeks they had a system in place where everyone in the kingdom got notified when a migrant came in. I'm sure some of you remember this. I know Mike, and I'm sure Panda and a couple others, if you've been playing for a while, you know that they had this system in for a temporary period of time. This system was fantastic. It was, but the challenge is in the process they went about it. First and foremost, they should not have notified everyone of when players are coming in. Why? Because if everyone gets notified that a new person is coming into the kingdom via like a system mail, what's going to happen? Well, that person's probably going to get messaged by a bunch of people. That is annoying, right? Like that. Like those are the types of processes that are in theory great, and really how they needed to implement it is they needed to just have the king be notified, right? So you just have a section that you develop in the king tools or the support system within Lost Temple, and you just have a log, very similar to how you have like a king's log of who's king. You just have a log of players that come in, you make it clickable so the king can message them if needed, and they have a consistent track record of who's incoming. But let me add some spice onto it. Now show who's leaving. So it's kind of like it's kind of like how if you're traveling into a country, right? You have to keep records of who's coming in and who's coming out. Really start trying to treat the kingdom builder as you are building, or you are kind of in or owning your own country. And that's just to give you a small taste, right? I could go on for hours about it, maybe days. I should write a book probably. Point is that there are so many untapped areas in the genre, and specifically in RoK, that they haven't even glossed over yet. And a big part of it is because of, one, how the developers view the direction they want to go with the game. And then secondly, that if you look at, and like I said, and this is the last thing I'm going to touch on before we really dive into everything, because I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I appreciate those who are gracing me with the allowance to dive into some of my thoughts here, is that if you look at the current content space for CCs, and as I always say, this is not a slight against them, this is just what they're doing, because it's probably just what they know. And you look at anyone from Chizgul to Drago to Gecko to Legend Roni, right? Whoever you enjoy watching, right? Any of the big CCs. You'll notice that if you ever go and look through their archive, which I've actually done a video on this, where I looked back 3 months on like the 3 or 4 biggest CCs in RoK, and I kind of went through their archive and looked for a lot of the trends. And what you'll notice is that pretty much every single CC outside of myself, and I don't know if there's any others, there could be, is that they focus on progression style content. So they'll tell you about events, they'll tell you how to level up in certain areas, maybe they'll hit you with some updates, but no one really talks about what I feel is the most important thing, which is managing a kingdom. And like we've talked about before, if you want to have a healthy, sustainable kingdom, if you want to have high activity, high player retention, if you want people to actually be able to talk to one another, or they're not waiting hours for someone else to respond, and I'm sure we've all played in kingdoms that maybe just didn't work out, or didn't go how we hoped they went, or maybe we were in them and they were going well, and then some things happened and they started dying off. I'm sure many of us know what it's like to play in a kingdom that is just not active, right? In the most respectful term and way to say that. And that's really the crux of this, right? If you think about if more kingdoms had more tools and opportunities and support systems in game, more kingdoms would be more healthy because they would retain more of the player base. Instead, there's no instruction on how to maintain a kingdom, right? RoK doesn't have guides or videos out or even helpful tooltips. If you look at the helpful tooltips, you can kind of get an insight to the developer's mindset. How did they even think of designing the game? And you notice that there's no tooltips, there's no special tips or anything that talk about managing a kingdom. The tooltips specifically talk about how to level your account, how to go and do this, click on this to level it or progress it here. So, don't get me wrong, right? There are some off videos that do help a little bit. For example, Chizgul and I think Shinshi had made some videos on, being able to kind of manage an alliance. And some others have touched on some. Even Gecko did a video where he kind of showed a couple different Zone 3 setups where he featured World War 96. This was like 2 years ago when he did one. I think 2.5 years ago. So there are some kind of one-off videos. But it's not to the point where it's a standard norm, right, where people talk about it. 99.99% of their content is usually about progression, right? It's about how to level, how to find the best pairing, how to how to swarm or how to do something. Don't get me wrong, that content is needed. That is quality content. No one, even myself, is disputing that. But the challenge is that it's left this big hole that has kind of set this precedent from the beginning of RoK's life, that this is the way we do things. This is the only way to go about playing the game. And because no one has really talked about how to manage a kingdom, the game has no tooltips, no support on even hinting at it. It's almost like a lost art, right? It's almost like something that you kind of only ever hear whispered in the corners from, the cuttlefish like myself, so to speak. But it is by far, in my opinion, I think the most important piece of content that players really need to hear. I would value this type of content over that kind of progression-based content. Even though it is needed, it's not the most important. Because the average player has no idea what to expect, and their gaming experience is essentially being shaped by the first people that they meet, more or less like what we probably would find in real life if anyone has mentors or, when you start hearing things from your parents at an early age. But anyways, thank you so much for just letting me dive into that for a moment. Okay. Speaking of support customer, customer support, I'm sure, is a whole different topic that we could probably get into at another time. Okay. That's it for me on my rant. I hope anyone, if not whomever, enjoyed that. I don't know what we're using, if it's voice chatting or... Never mind, too. We're getting the gifts that are coming in now. Got it. Okay. So we'll be using voice chatting for the duration of the meeting. First and foremost, I appreciate it. Looks like we actually have a few more people in here now than we did before. With that being said, let me kind of go through some of our outlines. I totally would turn the video on, but we have more than 25 people, which, I love it so much. You guys are killing it on a daily basis. Okay. So let me just kind of go to my jump meeting. Like I said, we'll use voice chatting for the duration of the meeting. First update is, like I said before, so I was trying to get some announcements out yesterday. Thankfully, I did get them out just a little bit later in the day. And excuse me, what do I have here? So for Alliance update specifically, again, I know, as I mentioned before, I am currently in talks and have group chats set up with Panthera and Desquad's officer team. So I have already given them updates. We're working on either replacing the lead with another lead, whether that may be Raythan or another R5. I think there's 2 more applicants I have to check to see about doing some interviews today for some other leads, or if we just end up kind of filling those players in to the current 6 alliances, and then I can fill Raythan with some of the new people that have still not been assigned in the ready check. So we still have again, people that have joined but haven't ready checked. And even if I just look at the amount of people that are ready checked minus my vote on each, what am I at? 22, 32, what is that? 54, 16. So there's about 60, up to 60 more people that haven't been assigned. And that's just a minimum number because it doesn't account for anyone that has joined, whether they joined not on the Discord, they joined on the Discord, but they haven't ready checked yet. So I look at that as kind of a minimum conservative number, pending that there's not any people that have reacted, because that could factor in as well for a little plus or minus. But it still gives us another pool, some more pool of people, and obviously people are still joining daily as we keep promoting, so that helps as well. I think the current leaders are in a good position as far as what they've been filling out for the spreadsheet. So I think all the names are up to date right now. The next thing I'll just have to go through or ask them to do is to just delete any of the names in which they haven't contacted or which haven't followed up with them or they haven't been able to get in touch with, so I can look at what the real-time numbers are. However, to make a note on that, the announcement I put out yesterday in Jump Announce at the bottom, for those of you who read that, which was point number 6, I actually thought was fantastic. And this, so the number 238, those are hard confirmed numbers. So those are people that I DM'd, and then they went to go and DM the leaders, and the leaders confirmed that they are still playing. So that is a minimum number, right? The number is higher than that. How much higher? Not sure. But there are obviously people that have not confirmed, either with that I haven't gone through, whether it's in Ready Check, or I'm sure some of the players that have just joined that just haven't, announced themselves on Discord or maybe followed up with the lead, or maybe some names and alliances that leaders just haven't accounted for yet, but is something that we can look at going forward. So personally, I think this number is great because this is more of like what our true head count is currently, kind of that we can expect to go into Final Kingdom, if not with a little bit more over the coming days. So that's the plan right there for those two alliances. Obviously, welcome Raythan as our newest R5. For those who haven't had a chance to read his resume, he has done a lot of leadership, managing, and running alliances in Lords Mobile for years. So he has a lot of experience, and we're hoping that he'll be able to bring that to the team that we do currently have when we end up assigning him some players as well. And like I said, there's, I think, 2 more lead apps that I have to go through and then possibly do some interviews today, if and when, of course, I find some time, though Tuesday is the day off, so that is the hope, is to do that as much as we can. Lastly, I'm sorry, let me go into the next one. I also want to give a big shout out to Rico, to my boy Rico Suave, who's in here. He's been doing a fantastic job of keeping up to date on our alliances to join. You can even see that he just updated it again about a little less than 2 hours ago, kind of showing what the current capacities are, so that way we can do the best job possible to kind of fill space where needed. And if you just look at the numbers across the board, albeit my buddy Ghost, because the alliance is a little bit more than half cap filled, everyone has at least minimum, if not great, capacity currently. And so now it's just a matter of, again, filling those in, keep reminding people that, hey, these are the alliances they can join. And if we're able to get everyone, close to max or just a few more people here and there across the next coming days, that's great. It's not really kind of a make or break situation, but it is something that I think it is something that I think is a really good thing to look at when it comes to when we look at the overall numbers, and not necessarily just who's the highest or who's the lowest, right? We'll fill people in over time, as long as we obviously get more players joining, which thankfully we have. And I think really it's just a matter of kind of finding them the next available alliance to go to. Unfortunately, because of trends, sometimes players will just join the ones that have the most capacity. That's pretty standard and pretty normal as well. However, when I start doing more of the assignments today, then that should hopefully be increasing as well. Because like I said, there is a big chunk of players that have yet to be able to join. Or I should say be assigned to where they might go to one alliance or the other. Okay, so that dives into, I think, number 2 there for me. And then let me see what else I have so I don't forget my outline here. Okay, so then there is some state of affairs, and that is just more of wanting to put some good tips and just good practices out there. I know I mentioned this in the announcement yesterday. However, big good practices, I know we talked about this before we started the jump as well, is that, just be cognizant of, whether you're talking in world chat. Again, I would never tell anyone to not talk in world chat. However, I would advise people that if you do decide to talk in world chat, just to be respectful, be aware of what you're saying. Sometimes it's good to try not to kind of make waves or make big waves, as the expression would say, just in case, because keep in mind that, if World Chat gets a new influx of active people that are talking in it, current players that are in the kingdom, most likely will click on some names and they'll probably see, hey, these people are low level. They'll be able to make an inference that, these people are probably jumpers that are coming through. And the challenge is that, even if they have rules where they don't hit players, or there's no player or city hitting in the kingdom, that does not mean that will stop every single person, or anyone that wants to from doing so. So sometimes trying to go a little bit under the radar can actually help a lot. And it's not just a matter of helping you, it's a matter of helping the group, right? The team. And, just being aware that, one's actions could actually have ripple effects that would affect and can affect people that are around you or just a part of the group you're in. The next thing I would say is, if depending on where your city is located, sometimes it can be good to try and move your city. Too bad they don't have like caravan relocations like they do in Infinity Kingdom, where you can literally click on a space and your little donkey will ride the cart out there and allow for you to move. So that is unfortunate, but outside of that, I would just say if you're able to, or if you've some people I'm sure probably already used those provincial beginner teleports outside of the migration one that we'll be using when we go to final. If you find yourself able to move, or maybe you're in a situation where you're just getting hit, obviously you can still always shield. You could send your troops to the center fortress if you have one. If not, you can send them to a flag if you think you might be in danger of hitting. Right, you can do that before you go to sleep or overnight. Of course, if you're able to move, right, without obviously burning an unnecessary teleport, or any of or I should say the important one, then feel free, of course, and especially if you're near Alliance territory, or better yet, just try not to gather on other Alliance territory, or even sometimes near it, right? Sometimes gathering on a neutral or an unoccupied area, even if it's far away from Alliance territory, that are alliances from people that are in the kingdom, can sometimes be really good as well. Right? These are just some tips to try and keep yourself, so to speak, under the radar. And
We still
yeah,
we still have people that are a nuisance. People that go out of their way and attack people that attack us. They're not even like in, or not even in their alliance. Actually, we have people attacking us outside our own territory. But just trying to work with them, get them the message, be back. Just asking why. How can we fix this? So we had a guy that was in our alliance and left, and then I guess got mad and started attacking one of our members about 15 minutes ago. Just people being turds.
yeah. No, and I think the thing is that in and of itself is a realistic expectation. That's something that can happen. I think the hope is for anyone and everyone is that usually they would prefer it not to happen. I think that's the hope for any of us, is that we can kind of go in, get what we need out of the kingdom, just kind of bide our time there until we move, with hopefully the least amount of obstacles or hurdles, or just anyone attacking. Thankfully, what I will say is that getting attacked is not the worst thing ever, because given the account is so low level, you're not necessarily going to lose as much as you would if you were higher. I think it's more so just the feeling of getting attacked. I've been in a couple projects I've ran where some people just had it out for groups, and there were times where, man, I might have got attacked 100 times, maybe more than that over the period that we were there. Thankfully, I didn't really lose a lot, because everything I was gathering for the time I was on was just being reinvested, which I know we've talked about, and we shared that in the walkthrough video, where you spend your resources on your courier station, other items that you're able to do to kind of reinvest your resources, so that way you can essentially kind of convert those things to items rather than just kind of holding on to them. Same thing with the troops, if there's ways to try and save some here and there. However, even if you are attacked a lot, it's not going to be, when you look at the scale of being at a lower level, right, there's only so high that we can really climb within the limited days that we're going to be operating in before we get to Final Kingdom. So the losses when you think about that within that vacuum are going to be minimal compared to if everyone was at a higher castle level, or a couple million power, or 10, 20 million power, then they were getting attacked by someone stronger than them. So that is a good thing. But yeah, I think the visual effect of getting attacked and having to do any of the wall rebuilding and retraining whatever may have been lost at that time, yeah, that is not necessarily I think a good feeling. I don't think anyone would want to take that on. But thankfully, it's not the end all be all. It's just, as a new player, they may not know that. And sometimes I think that if we have some of the new players that are asking about getting attacked, that's actually an opportunity for us, for players that know that it's not really a big thing, right? We can let them know that, right? We can educate them on, hey, this really isn't as big as it is, right? Here's some things that you might lose, but it's not going to factor really into your overall growth over a period of time. And if we can kind of console them or console them in that respect, and just give them good information so they know, because as a new player they might think, well, man, I'm trying to min-max my account to 100%. I remember when I did my first jump, that's exactly how I thought. I didn't want to get attacked. I didn't want to misclick anything. Like I was literally trying to like Grand Theft Auto 100% storyline complete, like just everything. And over time, because I didn't know any better and I didn't have additional information because no one had really explained it to me at that time, right? I think that's something we definitely have an opportunity to do. And sometimes it's just a matter of taking a minute or a few minutes out of your day to write, if you see someone posting in a chat, whether it's an Alliance chat or on Discord somewhere, maybe in your Alliance Discord, take time out of that day. Take time out of your day if you haven't, and you notice that, hey, this is something that I know a little bit more than this person on. Let me just give them some good information. Let me just let them know how, it's not the end of the world. It's not really that impactful for them. Here's some things that that would be good for them to know. And then here's what they can do going forward. Sometimes taking the time to explain, but also in addition, providing good solutions or potential next steps that they can do can mean the world to a new player who doesn't know as much as someone else. And they'll feel very appreciative, and you'll most likely have their gratitude for that. They'll think to themselves, wow, being a part of this group, they're really taking the time to not only educate and inform, but, give me, good solutions and kind of helping out in that troubleshooting aspect. And that's a lot of what I do. Most of my day is a lot of it is just giving good, up-to-date information, based on whether what I know or other people can inform me of. And I think even you hear me often say myself, even I don't necessarily have all the answers. And there's obviously players that in certain areas in the game know way more than I do. And I think it's important that we defer to those people at times and we really lean on their abilities, their knowledge, their experience, because I think anyone who's kind of a specialist in their field, should one, I think, be recognized and highlighted, but those people, can really also help define how our kingdom and I think how our group moves going forward when it comes to providing good information and, having confident individuals in those positions to kind of lead, especially whether it's kind of just taking the next step or being at the forefront of, whatever area we might be going into. I think it's really important. Okay. Let me see what else I got here. What I got for jump meeting? Let's make sure I'm here. Okay, we got state of affairs, and now I'm at... Okay, so we got player distribution for the next wave. I did briefly touch on this a little earlier, is that for player distribution, we are going to be doing that. I'm hoping today is going to be when I get to it a little bit after the meeting finishes. Like I said, I just have to take a look at the spreadsheet and make sure that the leads have just deleted or removed or, maybe just... Again, I think everyone has them highlighted versus unhighlighted with their own color, so I can always use that at a bare minimum. And then we'll kind of go about the next round of dispersion. And so again, that should be happening today. The next one is how much longer are we going to be in the First Kingdom? So at the moment, I don't know if anyone currently has a time update, because I think I made my account a little bit later. So can someone post in voice chat for me? Just what the current time is for anyone who made their account at 23 UTC, or if not, within an hour of. I think we should be. What am I at right now? 4:12.
6 days and about 10 hours. That's like a 30-minute late account.
Okay. No, that's great. So okay, yeah. So we will most likely be here. Let me see real quick what the intervals are for kingdoms, but I would imagine somewhere around 5 to 6 days, maybe 5.5 could be a little bit more ideal. I'm just checking right now. So 2770, excuse me, and 2771 just came out an hour and 35 minutes ago. So 72, 73 is next, most likely, if they release another 2 block. And then we got 74, 75. Now, given we are a B-type kingdom, we would have to... I have to think about this. 72 is D, 3 is A, 4 is B, 5 is C. Yeah, okay. So most likely 2775 could be the one we go for, as that would be C. There's also the chance that we might go for 2776, which would be a D. So we have two options, really. I'm in a group chat right now with, I think, all the other leaders that I know Death Squad had initially set up for us, or for me and him. And so have been coordinating. Some of them have been kind of tracking it as well, and so some most likely will be going to 74. So 75 or 76 is most likely going to be our final landing. It just depends on the intervals, which, again, we are keeping track of, and every time a new set comes out, I'm also factoring that into what that new interval is, so we can try and keep up to date on that. But we will, of course, put an announcement out at least a day, if not in this case, hopefully, maybe 2 days in advance at the earliest, just so everyone is aware. Okay, I think that covers that one, and then I also, I guess, cover the next one, which was Target Kingdoms to aim for, coincidentally. Okay. So at this point, I think I feel like I've covered at least everything I wanted to within this kind of 26 minutes at this point, after I had my little 10-minute masterclass rant going on. Let me go ahead and open the floor up now for any questions that anyone has. And like I said, we're going to kind of go top down like we usually do. So again, I'll call on you, and if you want to ask a question, you want to provide some feedback, anything, right? Comments, concerns, etc., as we always say, you're more than welcome to come on the mic. If you want to start typing up your question or what you'd like to ask in voice chat, so when we get to you, you can just hit enter, or even if you just have to go, someone will always be there to ping me just in case, so I don't forget. But let me start top down, and then I'll maybe just add some concluding thoughts after we get through everyone. But the bulk, I just really wanted to get through there in the beginning. So let me start at the top here with Harmonic.
I'm fine here.
Okay. Alrighty. Let me see. Nika? Oh, gee. Alright. Ali G. So that's an old school reference for anyone. A wolf.
Nothing here.
Okay. Ramen. Okay, we will. Let me see. Alpha Deer. I'm butchering hard. Okay. Bacchus.
I'm fine. All clear. Thanks.
All right. Barbaganios. Okay. Big Brit.
I'm fine, thanks.
Oh, okay. No, thanks.
Hello. So I have a few questions.
Sure.
I'll start with the first one. MGEs in this kingdom, how are you doing them? Obviously, Julius Caesar is quite a useless commander anyway, so you don't really need to do a fixed MGE for him. But when it comes to Martel, KVK1, he is the best garrison going in KVK1 alongside a Sun Tzu or a YSG. So will you be doing fixed MGEs, say on the last Julius Caesar as a practice run, and then from there always having fixed MGEs unless during KVK you don't?
So for the first question, good question. We have touched on this a few times, though the plan is to have a mix. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a rotation. I think the hope is, that once we eventually get to a state where we are able to inform the kingdom in its outright, would be really the more so appropriate time to try and start working in fixed MGE rotations. The challenge is that if we try to implement fixed prior to getting access to LT and more specifically Kingsmail, it can just cause more harm than it does good. Now, I'm not sure how the timeline works out now because I know some of the stuff hasn't sped up since I played. So someone would know that more than me as far as by the time we hit Lost Temple and we get access to Kingsmail, will the Charles MGE be there? That timeline I'm unsure of at the moment.
It comes after, I believe. You get LT and then Martell's after. We'll have one Julius Caesar, and then we will have Martell.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for the information. In that case, then I guess let me continue on there. So once we get access to those things, it will be easier for us to inform, and we'll obviously do a lot of what I find that's important is when you're starting out in a kingdom, I find it's less about implementing your rules kingdom-wide, and it's more about building relationships. You want to not come off as, in short, a dick. Right? Or an ovary, depending on, if we just want to give the ladies some love too. You really want to, God, I don't want to give another masterclass here because I could go on for hours. However, what I will say in its shortest form is that you really want to nurture that. You want to take time to go out of your way and introduce yourself. Treat it like you're meeting someone new for the first time. You don't want to just immediately come off and start saying, hey, really nice to meet you. We're going to do things this way. Like that, when you think about how, the human nature is, player psychology, how we treat one another, that's not the best approach to do. Now, with that in mind, the hope is to do those introductions early. Plant those seeds of starting those relationships, building that rapport over a time, so that way we can get people on board, really sell them on the vision, sell them on what we're looking to do, and then at that point, right, we can have an easier time. The likelihood of us doing something like implementing fixed and free-for-all MGEs or semi-fixed, it becomes so much easier instead of more of a daunting task because we didn't take the time to do those things and really build a good foundation early from day one with everyone in the kingdom, right? It's not just about our group, where we, so to speak, prioritize them over everyone else in the kingdom. In certain respects we do, but at the end of the day, having organic growth within a kingdom is just as equally as important. You don't want players or other alliances to feel that you're immediately ostracizing them because you're telling them, hey, you're not going to get these, or we're not going to let you go to zone 2, we're not going to go to zone 3, or hey, we're only going to take the top 6, but we've basically rigged the top 6 by loading our deck, so to speak, so we already know we're going to be the top 6. We don't want to do things like that. I've seen how that goes. And more often than not, it usually goes down a consistent path, and I'm sure others here have seen that as well, where you just lose more of your player base than you actually hope to retain. And so from there, once we do those things, now kind of getting to the MGE stuff, the plan really is to try and do as many fixeds as we can. However, even if, what I will say is the plan, I think, at minimum, unless for example, let's just say running fixed is going so well that we're just not running into anything, that's different. However, the plan I'd like to try and implement early on is kind of doing like a 3-1 rotation, where we'll do 3 fixed, 1 free-for-all. Maybe we might do every other, depending on who's up. And I think to your point, the MGE commander that is up for that rotation is important to recognize, one, how important is the commander, how many people really need the commander, and factoring that then into how we go about doing our fixed or semi-fixed processes. Though what I will say is the hope is to try and do something like close to, if not, a 3-1. But like I said, that will vary per the commander, because when it comes to the PvP stuff, and I'm always the first to say it, right, when it comes to commander pairings, I am not the most proficient. However, like I've said before, I am always and more than happy to lead on the expertise of others who know a lot more than I do about commander pairings. So that way I can be well informed at the same time, so we can make good decisions based on what we've promised the kingdom, what we've promised this group first and foremost for how we're going to do things. And we can try and do that in the best way that we can. I will say at a foundational level, my hope is to try. I'm always a big believer of trying to have as many people be as contributing or contributive as possible. And so when it comes to MGE commanders, I feel there's a lot more value in spreading out the amount of people that can unlock MGE commanders rather than just having the top 1% winning them back to back. That's always going to be my belief. Now, the only time that may vary is if we just only had 5 spenders total in the kingdom, right? You might have to do some adjustments there. If you literally only had, if you were just in this crazy situation or extreme situation. However, I think there's a lot more value in having, if whatever it is, 60 or 80 people with a Charles or a specific MGE commander that's useful, rather than just having the same 20 people doing the same spots over and over again. But yeah, I hope that answers the question, or the first one.
Yeah. Hopefully one day we can sit down and I'll really go through fixed MGEs with you. I'm quite knowledgeable with it. I've done it quite a lot. I've recently just done it in a 2484 Kingdom. We had fixed MGEs for Martel and we had fixed MGEs for Saladin as well. It is very important to do it, especially for KVK. I know what you said about having more people have Martel, but I used to think like that as well. I used to hate fixed MGEs until I realised how important a fixed MGE is, especially having 5 garrisons in KVK with an expert Martel is very, very important. And that's only 5 spots. There's another 10 spots that also give heads for Martel and can, give people an unlock or a few heads towards it, stuff like that. So, yeah, we'll definitely touch base again about that.
Oh, for sure. And most likely what I'll probably do is just put a team together. Usually this is something that we've done before. I don't think Ghost is here. Otherwise he would have commented, I'm sure, on this. But usually what we'll do is we'll put teams together. So we'll give roles out for specific things. So we might put together an MGE team of people that just feel they're very well versed in it. And, I'll check in on that and I'll see what everyone feels like. Maybe everyone gives their opinion or their thoughts on what they would rank, as, hey, when this MGE comes up, I would recommend us doing a 3-1 fixed, or I would recommend us doing all fixed. I would recommend, because the other thing to factor into as well is that when you start getting into the later MGEs, the one thing that I feel some people don't take into account is how many universal gold sculpts do you have? You're always going to have a varied amount of players that are saving universal gold sculpts for specific commanders, or whenever they spend them, then they'll save them again for whenever they want to use them, or they'll just save them for whenever a situation comes that arises. So you can easily run into a situation where you have a few people that are just saving, that are just buying packs, they're getting as many gold sculpts as they can, they'll save them for the first or the second MGE, but then let's say the third MGE, not really a useful commander, the fourth one comes around, okay, now this is useful again. You're going to have people that are constantly saving those gold sculpts. So that's also another big factor to take into consideration, which is why we'll usually do things like ask for screenshots to see how much everyone has, so we can also factor that into making a good informed decision on where we may do placings when it comes to fixed. Because once, especially if you're a big spender, once you max your account out, there's not necessarily a lot left, as far as then a lot left to do on the building aspect. You might have to do something like on the research, or maybe start diving into equipment. Those are things we'll look as well. I mean, I remember back in the day, and I don't know, I'm sure they probably still do it. I remember back in the day in JWM's Kingdom, they didn't let anyone farm Lost Temple guards for equipment drops. They only let the people on their Osiris League team do it, and it was only a few select people, and it was exclusive. Like, if you could not do that, if you did it, it was a really big problem. Like, you either would be ousted or you'd be blacklisted and zeroed. And they did that specifically because they wanted to try and farm and have the highest farming rate percentages for a few people that were going to be contributing to their Ark of Osiris or OL team. And so, again, I've seen how it is on the super extreme end. But like I said, I think it's important that, even, for example, someone in my position is always looking to be open to take in really just that knowledge and that experience that I'm sure someone like yourself and others bring as well, that just know more than I do. So that way we can have a good conversation and everyone can kind of, it's the rising tide lifts all boats, so to speak. I know what I do very well. I know what I bring as much as I'm sure others know what they bring to the table. And I think oftentimes it's a matter of just being open to listen to that, right? Being willing to hear that feedback, to hear those suggestions on how other people would do it. because I think that is really how we're going to be able to make the best and hopefully the most well-informed decisions for the kingdom. And the last thing I'll say, because I know you said you might have a few more questions, the last thing I'll say is the biggest thing that I've come to understand about running certain MGEs, but more specifically fixed, is that the average player has no idea what it is. They have no idea what or how a fixed MGE is beneficial. And that was something I know you briefly mentioned on, once you learned and you figured it out, you realized that, hey, this is really the only way to go about it. And I more or less feel the same way. However, I do think it's almost equally, if not more important, to make sure we are educating the player base. We are informing them and really explaining why it is that doing a fixed MGE is beneficial. Why it is that a free-to-play player would not necessarily be prioritized for a fixed MGE. But that does not mean that a free-to-play player could not eventually, over a period of time, once they're able to potentially max out that commander, right, by collecting enough gold sculpts or getting them to in a certain skill level ideal state where they can be useful in doing something like a rally or being more open field oriented. I mean, there are certain things that I find for the amount of kingdoms I've been in where management or leadership just does not know how to explain stuff to people. And if they did, things would go so much better for them, or they would have gone so much better for them. And it's just because the average player doesn't know as much as someone who's been playing the game, which is pretty standard. But when you start applying these kind of outside restrictions and factors that are not built into the game, that's when you really need to take the time to provide some tender love and care and explain why we're doing things the way they are. Because if we can explain those things before they come up and they can be well received and well understood, that can help you reduce so much margin of error over a period of time. But anyway, sorry, that's the last thing I'll say there. You had another question, Britt?
Where do you see the kingdom going after KVK 1? Are you going to be aiming for like an Imperium AC kingdom? Are you going for a B? Like where is the kingdom going for the future?
Yeah, I know we've touched on this, I think, in the Jump Goals channel. However, the hope is to not go into Imperium. I've played in Imperium in a few, and I'm sure others have as well. I'm not really a fan of where the current Imperium restrictions are at currently, so the hope is to try and not go into Imperium and really just focus on building out a strong active player base, because no matter what, if you're building out activity, power is going to come with that. You're going to have people that spend or that super grind to the point of where you basically have rally leaders, so to speak. I've never seen a kingdom that only has ever had 5 spenders total, or 5 people that play 16 or 18 hours a day. There's always a decent amount. It just depends on how much. So in the regard to Imperium, yes, the hope is to not go into Imperium. That's not the plan. As far as after KVK 1, I think the hope is to try and build something that will sustain itself. I think the great thing about having meetings like this and having as many people that we have that have joined, which is fantastic, I think, is that players are engaged, right? They want to attend, they want to hear what's going on, they want to be a part more than just playing in game. And I think that's fantastic. I think that's how we start to do things, like building a really good community, and we have these types of open conversations. And I'm not one to shy away at all from anyone asking me anything. Trust me, it's happened almost every project. So you kind of have to. It's almost an occupational hazard, so to speak, when you're in a position like mine. I think having these kinds of open conversations, and again, whether someone wants to ask a hard question or anything, I need to be able to answer it at least as best I can. And if I don't have an answer, obviously find an answer or get an answer in that regard. But I'm sorry, not to veer off too much. I hope that answers that question.
Mm-hmm. No, that's it for now. Thank you very much.
Sure. No, thanks, Britt. Okay, Brick Time.
No questions here. Thank you.
Okay. Ooh. No worries. All right, Kane. Or Kane. I'm just going with variations so I can try to hit one that's right. All right. Thanks. Sorry, Cerberus.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts.
Yeah.
The first one is, right, so I'm over here trying to manage, trying to figure out who's active, who's not. I got 6 people that I'm pretty sure who are inactive, but I message them, of course, trying to, get conversation from them. But then I have members that are they're hopping from alliances who told me they can't come back because they don't have teleports, so they're still in other alliances, but they're put in our alliance, but they're not in our alliance. You know, they're in other people's alliances because they don't have teleports, right? So, how is the guy managing distribution of players when we have players that are not even in their alliance they're supposed to be in?
Sure. So good question, and yes, this is something I've touched on in an officer announce post. I've also touched on this in a jump announce post as well. I can't recall if I might have went over it last meeting, but to dive in for that, I think the important thing is to look at, what is something that's reasonable for us to really care about, and what's something that we might consider to be kind of an overreach or somewhat unreasonable, where we're kind of going out of our way, or we may cause more rifts than anything else. And so for something like this, yes, I think the hope is that when I'm going through and assigning players and they're joining certain alliance, the hope is that if I assign someone, I DM them, right? They ready check, they show they're interested. I reach out and I say, hey, I'm going to place you here with this lead. The hope is that, yeah, sure, it would be nice if they went to the alliance that they were assigned. That's one of the reasons why, if you look at Rico, right, putting in the work for me asking and him just stepping up at the time to update the allies to join, right, so we can have that active, constant list of showing the capacity, so that way players would know where they can go. That was one of the reasons we implemented that. Secondly, though, again, the hope is that they will join. Do I think that it is the worst thing possible and it's a detriment to the alliances or an indication that the group's going to fail? No, not at all, right, if they don't join the alliance. One of the things that I did come out and say is that the important thing is that the players are joining a current active alliance. And once we get to Final Kingdom, that's really where, at the end, the players will join those current active alliances, or the hope is the majority, if not everyone, will join the alliances they're assigned to. This is just one of those realistic expectations to have when you're doing a project, is that anything that could happen, may happen, or will happen. And a lot of times it's just a matter of adapting to what is important versus what is not the most important thing to focus on. Yeah, and that's not to say that what you're bringing up is not something of importance. I do think it is. However, I just think that when I'm rating it on a scale of 1 to 10 on, is this literally an 11, right, where we should kind of be, and this is not to say you're freaking out, but just in general, right, to say that, yeah, we should totally be freaking out about players that are not going to their designated alliance, I just don't rate it that high. But we do advise, we do friendly reminders to players in the announcements, and I'm sure some others may do in game as well. However, I would not penalize, or I would not give someone a slap on the wrist if they don't go to the alliance that they're assigned to during the first kingdom, which we're in now. If something like that happens in the final kingdom, then yeah, okay, maybe we might need to dig a little bit into why, or do they have a friend there. The hope is to try and do everything we're doing now so we can get all of those things hammered out before we end up migrating to final kingdom. And the hope is, and we'll release the list publicly as well. So I'll take like a wide screenshot of it once we kind of get those final placings down. So that way players will also have a visual reference on if maybe they just might forget or they might not be sure. We'll have an overlay map similar to what we did for the first kingdom, where we'll say, hey, here's the province your alliance is in, this is where you go, here's the alliance you join, here's the contact or multiple contacts you can reach out to, and then on top of that, here's a visual aid. Right. I like to do things like NASA, where we kind of triple check. So if I can hit you with a bunch of ways to confirm and kind of verify that are just, kind of front and center, that's what we like to do. But anyways, I hope that answers the question, even if it wasn't in the shortest of words.
I mean, people that are leaving our alliance are just leaving to go do forts. Which yesterday we were doing forts. Mm-hmm. Guy left to go to alliance to do forts. But we were doing forts at our line. Couldn't get fort done because people were hopping to alliances to do forts. Yeah. And at a certain point in time, we don't have enough people on to do forts. People want to do forts. I can rally them, but if I don't have enough people to, actively take down the fort because they're leaving to join other alliances to do forts, it makes certain members mad. You know.
Yeah. No. I think on the topic of things like forts, group barb hunting, doing. Oh God, I'm forgetting what the other one was. I think there was 3 things, and I'm having the biggest brain fart right now. It'll come to me. But as far as on the topic of doing those things, I think by doing the assignments we have was to try and put people in the closest regions. However, usually when you're organizing things like that, there's a couple ways to do it. One is you reach out to every person and you collect your own up-to-date list, right? So you say, hey, can you let me know what times, what UTC in-game times you would be available if we decided to do forts, if we decided to do group barb hunting, right? When are you available? And then you would go around and ask everyone. You put all that in a spreadsheet and you basically find the overlap for the most amount of people. Another way to do it is, and I'm not sure if it gives you a number. You might have to look at this visually, but you can look at the amount of people that are online by the green, I think it's the green light that's near their name on the Alliance roster. Now, I don't know if they've updated anything where it'll show you the total amount of people that are online currently, but if it does, you can also use that. So you can do it over a 24-hour period, right? You basically just do an audit check every hour on the hour, and you look at how many people are online over a 24-hour period. And then you can also figure out, hey, this might be a good thing to do. But I think the challenge sometimes is that if we're expecting players to just, like, if we're just going to be like, hey, we're just going to set a time to do it, and then not a lot of people show up, is that really an indication? Is that an accurate indication that there's just not a lot of active people? Or is it more of an indication that we did not prepare ourselves in advance well enough so that we could have the most amount of people online at a given time when we were in order to plan for the best showing to do something like that? Because it's easy if you're online at a time and you just get super lucky and there's 5, 6, 9, 10 people online at the same time and someone just posts in a Alliance chat, hey, do we want to do some forts? And everyone's like, yeah, let's do some forts. I've seen that happen before. But usually when you're planning something in advance, it's good to have some data, right, on when are these people most available. Now, that's not hard to do, but it does take time to collect. And this is kind of where it gets more into, what that realistic expectation is, right? If I was leading an alliance, I would never expect people to just show up. I would never expect a minimum amount of people or a required amount of people that we need to show up for an event if I myself did not put the work in to take the time out of my day to go and find and collect availability times for each day from the players, right? It doesn't matter if people were assigned to me. Again, I'm just giving this is, me kind of giving a solution on how I would do it if I was leading an alliance, because this information is important to collect so that way we're not necessarily underperforming or underachieving or underrepresenting what we may feel is true activity versus what we're not able to show because we kind of didn't go through and do this prep before. Now, when you have more players than an alliance, there's less margin for error, right? So if I try to do, like, if I said, hey guys, we're going to try and do forts at 18 UTC, but I have 50 people in the alliance, there's a chance I may not have a lot of people show up, right? Or as many people as I'd like to. But if I did the same thing in an alliance with 100 or 150 players, now I have a more higher percentage chance of having more people show up, even if I did not take the time to go out and kind of collect time availabilities for each player. Why? Because I have a larger pool of people to work with that probably have varied times that they're available. So it's more of like you're just getting lucky, so to speak. So I don't really think that's an accurate. Does that make sense based on what I'm explaining, Severus?
I don't think you're understanding, boss. Like he's trying to say every time they're
Okay.
trying to do rallies, that everyone leaves, join other alliances. So he wants to keep the people in the alliance so he can start doing rallies. Like I don't think you understand it correctly.
If you're specifically asking about people that, so I have a good understanding then on that portion. You're saying that you set a time to do a rally in advance so people can prepare, whether it's 12 hours or however long, depending on what you know for people that are online. And you're saying that you set the time to do it on that day, and then people are actively or proactively leaving the alliance before the time comes up? Did I lose Cerberus?
You forgot to say question mark at the end, so they know there was a question.
Question mark. Yeah, touche, Dom. Oh no, it sounds like Cerberus is a little bit away. But Shadow, I don't know if you're in that alliance as well. Is that basically what you're saying is happening?
So what happened in the start was like people use their teleports to jump to other alliances.
Okay.
Now they don't have enough people to do rallies, and that's the big problem. Like I've been a lot, like I'm been active in voice chat, right? So a lot of people that's in that alliance, it's a big problem for them because they don't have active members to fill out rallies because everyone jumped to other alliances already because there's no control of who's jumping and who's coming back and all that shit's going on.
I got you. Okay. Well, a few things there then. One, what I would say is that obviously we can't. I don't think we can send alliance mails because of the CH level cap restriction from what someone told me. However, I do think it's good to obviously set up in-game group chats with your specific alliance members at minimum. I know we have one for the officer team and I think one for the general jumper community. What I would say is that...
May I cut in real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
There is no in-game mail. Like, you can't send an in-game mail, but you can use the calendar. So there is like a calendar system, like where you can create an event. We used one yesterday just to test this, and you can do like a ready check type of event. It was just a joking one, you know. We was like a guy made it was kind of sent out like a alliance mail. He was like, "Do you guys think Draco's always lurking?" And then it gave us the option to hit check mark or decline.
Oh, nice.
So maybe we could utilize that in other alliances. It's just a thought, you know. It's something where you could plan better, maybe.
Okay. No. I think that's a great idea. Actually, I'll definitely include that in the next announcement. So thanks for bringing that up. I think on the topic of doing things like forts and bar group hunting, what I will say is when I was doing my first few jump projects, I never did any rallies. I never did any group bar hunting. I never did any CF building, like at all. And the majority of the players that I had in those groups. So for those who may not know, if you haven't read my resume, right, my first two projects, and I'm going to get to answer the question as well. I just think this part is really important for me to hammer home. Is that in my first two projects, right, I recruited over 800 people. I pretty much did 99% of the recruiting. But I did about 800 people in 2 weeks. We definitely didn't hit that number in 2 weeks, but we did get a really good number. And that's just because the volume and traffic of people that were jumping back then when I did my first two projects was a lot more than now. When I did those projects, I never heard from anyone to any degree that we are now, which is not a good or bad thing, about anyone feeling, you know, a certain type of way when it came to doing forts or, you know, not being involved in this or that. And what I will say is that it did not in any way, shape, or form, and this is the most important part, it did not in any way, shape, or form impact the opportunities and the chances for the project to be successful going into the Final Kingdom. Now, that at the same time is not to say that, yeah, we should just push that aside and disregard that. However, I do think it's important that we just have a realistic expectation that these things can happen, and we can't control where people are going to go. However, we can do things, like I stated, like like Bear stated as well, right, as some good workarounds, some troubleshooting to do ahead of time. So that way, and again, maybe some players, I think there's a few things to look at this. Maybe some players just don't want to do rallies, right? That's another side of looking at it. So if you're trying to do rallies, maybe some people don't want to do rallies. Or maybe some players just don't know that they can do rallies, right? So taking the time, this kind of goes back to what I was saying before. We really have to take the time to educate and inform players. And we shouldn't assume that every player has a base level of understanding or knowledge, or a certain level of knowledge and experience where they know, oh, cool, someone said something about doing a rally. I now know what that means. I know I have to go here. I know I have to send this when they click it. I need to be online here, even if it's only for a sec. Like, even though the steps are not super complicated, and there's not many of them to actually participate in rallies, we have to keep in mind that the majority of the players in this jump are new. They do not know what I know. They don't know what you know, Cerberus. They don't know what Bear knows or the next person, right? And we may think to ourselves, hey, doing rallies is not a complicated thing. But to a new player who has no idea what they're doing for the most part, right outside of watching maybe some of my videos or others, talking to some people, playing the game themselves, they are at such an infancy level of their understanding that's why we really have to give some tender love and care. That's why it's difficult, right, when we're not able to do things like send mails. That's why doing something like setting up an Alliance group chat, even if you set up a read-only group chat. This is something we mentioned to the officer team and leadership team as well. This is something I've done in Infinity Kingdom and at times in RoK when I was helping out in those areas. Sometimes you can set up an in-game chat with the people and you just title it read only, and that's basically your in-game announcement, right? So you can give information there. You can do something like that as well on your Discord. But I think there's a few factors where it's not necessarily as black and white as, you know, people just aren't showing up and it's making people mad. However, if you notice that people are maybe getting irritated or whatnot, take that time to go out and reach out to those people. Address that. And if you may not feel comfortable doing that, ask someone else who is. Someone else that's an officer in the Alliance, or maybe a leader. Maybe you let your leader know. Or if not, you can always come to me. And if it's a matter of, hey, boss, would you mind talking to this person? Just giving them some information on maybe what to expect to help out. Or, hey, can you give me some ideas? I've had a couple of people, I don't know anyone who saw my video before, where I actually think I gave Cerberus a shout out in that one. I don't know if you watched that, but I thought it was such a fantastic video. And I've had people that have come to me and they'll say, hey, boss, how would you address this? Or, hey, can I just get your thought? Can I get your opinion on, what would you do in this situation? Sometimes going to someone else first and asking them if you may not feel comfortable doing it yourself. Because like I said, this is kind of me diving into how much more, I don't want to say work intensive or labor intensive, but there is a matter of kind of going that extra distance, right? Like doing your due diligence, and at the same time having realistic expectations where it's not just a black and white scenario of, hey, people aren't showing up for rallies, people are getting depressed. Sometimes it's good for us to try and look at why is it that people may not be showing up for rallies, and then also, is it the most important thing that is that we would classify as going to be the make or break for the jump? At the end of the day, it's not. But if we really want to try and do those types of things, or at least offer those opportunities to do rallies or the group barb hunting, we should also take a proactive approach in trying to reach out to as many people in the Alliance as we can, so we can schedule those things ahead of time. Whether it's doing the calendar route, like Bear said, reaching out to people to find out what their UTC times are. Now, if it's just people that are leaving, and you're saying you have 5 or 7 or 8 people total in the Alliance, that's different. But if you're at 20 or 30 people, you have enough people to arguably do a rally. It's just a matter of coordinating those times out, right? So you can try and connect it that way. And I think if people come out and, like I said, if they're voicing their concerns or, saying, man, this sucks, I can't even do a rally, take time to address that. Take time to talk to that person. Because sometimes people are saying that because they are frustrated, but they're frustrated because they just may not have the information they need to then have a realistic expectation on their approach for it. I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with people that have done that exact same thing that you're mentioning, Shadow and Cerberus, and I've had a conversation with them, and now they feel so much better about the situation because I was able to, if you want to say, talk them down or just give them what they needed, right? Which is, sometimes it can be as easy as you just reaching out and showing them some attention, right? And taking time to talk through things with them. The challenge is that not everyone is willing to do that. That's just a fact. And that's why I say that if you may not have, first and foremost, some people may not want to. Other times they just may not have the time. And so if you don't, ask someone else to, or ask someone, hey, for their thoughts on how they would approach it. Because trust me, there's always an option. There's always a way to address something. I hope that answers the question, though, Cerberus. I don't think it's a good feeling. So.
I do have one thing to add on to that. Our Alliance, Perfectly Strange, we did accept a few people in that moved over. I'm not sure from which Alliance, but during that time, we'd had, I think, a friend of a friend in the Alliance. who was like 6 million power, and he had like 30 some odd Lohars. And we'd put in the family chat in game, hey, if you guys want to come over and do a few Lohars to try to get, Lohar, we offered them to come over and try to get a commander. And I'm not sure if that's something that is being talked about here or not. But I did want to put that information out so everyone was clear on that. It wasn't really just about doing fort rallies. Everybody can do those, but we just had the opportunity, and we wanted to try to get as many people, as possible to share those Lohars. So we weren't trying to be selfish or anything. It was just something that we'd offered and put out there. So I hope that isn't what this gentleman's talking about. And if it is, we apologize. We're not trying to take all your all's guys as active players. We were just trying to offer an extra benefit, I guess, because we can't do Lohars like normally. You go to a newer kingdom, then you jump to an older kingdom for KVK. This was how I did it whenever I did my jump, or you go to the old kingdom, do the KVK stuff, then go to a newer kingdom, and then you go to your final kingdom, so you can get Lohar and all that stuff. But there was an offer that was made, to some people, and I think like 4 or 5, maybe 6 people did take up on that offer, and they have joined. They've done Lohars, and then they might not have the teleports to get back. So that could be something that this guy was talking about. But I just wanted to let it be known, that we were just offering up them to do Lohar rally, so some people could try to get Lohar early if they wanted it. So again, if it felt like we were trying to take your guys as active members, that's not what we were doing. We were just trying to give everybody the opportunity to try to do a couple Lohars, because we had a guy that had 30 some odd rallies that he could do. So I just wanted to put that out there, let that information be known.
All right. I don't think you guys touch the subject in the right spot so far. May I ask my question now?
Sure, go ahead, Britt.
I think what he's referring to, like, I've been around in chats, in like talking to people, and by being around, I listen to a lot of people's concerns and such. And I think that, let me remember everything you guys said because it's a lot. But one thing that is problematic, first things first, is the leadership rotation. Like, the leadership abandoned boat in the first 3 days, right? So
yeah,
that's allied to the guild having 30 players and seeing people doing rallies here, doing Lohars there. That affected the morale of those people. Like, I've been there on their guild to help out with helps because they couldn't build because there was not enough helps, and that affected their morale so much that a lot of people are gradually talking about quitting, and we are trying to cheer them up when that happens. Like, it's not the final kingdom. And I totally agree with Boss when he said that rallies don't affect the final product that much, but morale does. So I think not addressing the morale shows a certain level of the attachment from the leadership to those players that are just trying to hold the fort and having fun with the game,
So first and foremost,
So
I completely agree. What I would say, and I did address that part as well when you said about about addressing that portion, and I said that in the beginning of the meeting, where and I mentioned this yesterday as well. So, I think you have a good point as well when it comes to the morale portion, which was another part that I touched on in somewhat of my long rant there that I'm sure just got mixed in. The way that a player feels at times it can really be factored in because they just don't know enough, or they don't know a lot about a certain situation. And if they're not able to engage or contribute in something, yes, that absolutely can affect morale. But the main reason it affects morale is because they, in their mind, think that it is of the highest priority, or it's of an important priority. And because they just don't know, I don't want to say any better, but because they don't have more information to be more informed, that factors into the level of importance they assign to what they're seeing they may not be able to do. As a second part, and then that's why I was mentioning, sometimes it's good to just reach out to people and say, hey, look, I noticed you said something in chat about doing rallies. Here's some things that we're doing at the moment. But that really comes down to the management team. right? That's the officers, that's the leads. That's one of the reasons why I mentioned in the announcement, along with touching a little bit on it yesterday, that I'm already in contact, excuse me, with the officer teams for each of those two alliances. The moment that those players step down, and this isn't something that you usually hear talked about, but I hope that it at least shows you that, like, I'm really on my game. Like, I really know my shiitake mushrooms to an extent. And the moment that those two leaders dropped, the very next thing I did was set up a Discord group chat with each of those two teams' current leaders, current officers, and we talked about what the situation was, and I provided them next steps to essentially kind of hold them over for another day or two on things they can do with the players to reassure them, and I basically laid out an exact plan on what to do. Like, I gave them the yellow brick road on what to do. Now, it really comes down to, are they doing that or are they not? Because that's something that's uncontrollable. I cannot control as much as I can't be everywhere at once, but what I can do is provide good next steps, provide how I would do something given the situation they're in, and I also provided, hey, here's the solution and here's what we're working on as well. That, I think, is definitely going, I don't want to say above and beyond, but doing the due diligence to address that vacancy, right, that you're pointing out, along with taking the time to address those players. But it also goes back to what I was saying. Not every officer, and this is such a bigger thing, but it really hammers the point home that it's one of those things where it's kind of almost like you get what you get. and this is more from like the officer leadership standpoint. Not every lead is going to have the same level of knowledge and experience as another. Same thing applies to officers. Same thing, even more so, applies to players. So an officer may not be the most well-versed in speaking to people, or they may not know what that next step is, right? That's why someone like myself and others, can help assist in those areas where if people ask, or if they need ideas, or, hey, what's something, how would you word something to help in this situation? People can ask. Oftentimes, unfortunately, what usually happens is that pride sometimes takes over, and at times some people can just be unwilling to want to get help or receive help, or they may think that it's a negative showing of their lack of maybe what they're not the most efficient in. I myself choose to embrace that and really just recognize what I'm not the most proficient at and what other people do better or more well-versed than I do, because it's not something that I specialize in, so to speak, at the moment, even if I may know a little bit. But I think that communication aspect on addressing those concerns is an absolute. I think we should take time. If you notice people are saying those things, or if you notice they feel that way, or if they reach out to someone in DMs, or if they post an alliance chat, or they post on your Discord, take time to address that. Give them the information. And then something that I can do to help is when we start distributing more players, right, which we're going to start doing today. I think the challenge is that at times we're hoping or really looking for some kind of overnight success story, or some kind of immediate action. And that's not to say that you are in what you're saying, Brick. It's just some people look for that. And if something doesn't happen within the next 60 to 180 minutes, right, to them it might just be a lost cause. I've seen this happen multiple times. But that's why I'm saying I think these are good next steps that we can do, right? Officers can hopefully be engaged enough to address those things with the players, and more importantly, know how to address those things. What to say, the tone to use, I think, is important. Me working on getting more players distributed between the alliances, so that way they can bolster some more activity, which I'll be doing today. And then just taking time to inform the players as well of what are some of the more important things to focus on, but at the same time let them know, hey, we're still working on trying to get more activity here. This is something we're doing now. We're starting to figure out, we're starting to ask people, hey, when are you available? So the next time we try for rallies, we'll have a higher chance of being successful. These are how we troubleshoot, right? Again, you bringing something, other people bringing something, that's great. But I do think it's important that we know what those next steps are. How can we get to that resolution, right, to come out better at the end? And I think some of the things I've just addressed hopefully should help in that. But it's really at this time a matter of, I can only control what I can control. I can work on player distribution. I can work on assisting and helping players out on how to address those things, or the officers on how to address those things. But because I'm not everywhere at all the time, right, I can't be in every single alliance. I can't address every single player in every alliance. That's where the hope is for the leaders, for the officers, more specifically in these two alliances who just don't have leaders, right? That's where hopefully the officers may be able to step up and do those things. for the players, at least in the interim, for hopefully what will be by the end of the day, right, until we figure out what we're going to do. Because I also agree with you. I think if it lingers too long, if it takes too long to address something, right, we can lose, potentially lose more players than we're able to keep. But as far as the moment it happened, it was addressed. So I hope that at least answers the question and kind of shows what I did on my end for the due diligence and recognizing what needed to be addressed.
I just wanted to hammer that down because, like, a position from you was all I needed, And I think a lot of other people wanted that position, so I wanted to make clear what the question was,
Oh,
Thank you.
Oh, of course, yeah. And don't get me wrong, if someone's telling me something and I'm missing the mark on the response I'm giving, I appreciate you re-clarifying, right, and saying, hey, I really meant to ask it this way. I definitely won't take any offense to that because I may not get it right in what I'm hearing or maybe what I'm understanding. So I appreciate you hitting it to me from a different approach as well.
No problem.
Okay. Is Severus back?
I'm right here, boss.
Okay.
That answers my question. I just reason why I'm upset. If you go to leave to go do low hearts or whatever, I'm just trying to keep up with everybody. Certain line leaders aren't off. Like my line leader, she works her butt off. During the day, she's only on like so long. So just to help her keep up track where everybody's at. For the time that she has on, so she's using all her time to try to find everybody. I'm just, trying to help. So, I'm making a point, make sure that people at least keep in contact with their leader once they do. If they can't come back because they don't have teleports or, whatever.
Oh no, our leadership is amazing. I'm not talking about that. I'm just,
It doesn't sound like anything was malicious. Like when I joined this jumper group yesterday, I was originally in SD. Now after 4 hours in SD, I did 2 farts, and this is my 5th time jumping. And I know 2 farts and 4 or 5 hours on a jumper account. I need to be more active. I need to be somewhere growing fast and getting ready to jump.
Right.
So I actually switched over on my own with my wife, and we went classy instead, and now we're there for good. And no one recruited me. They didn't ask too many questions. I just went there, and that's where I am now.
Well, I said earlier, she's only on for so much point of the day because she has a full-time job. So, I don't care if you leave. Just let me know. That's where you're at. So, because she's trying to do, she's trying to do all these things. Trying to make sure that certain people on Alliance are in Discord. So if we see one day she comes on to see there's 53 people online in our Alliance, but tomorrow she comes on, there's only 48. She's asking where does the other people go? So she ain't got to track them down. I just make sure that everybody, accountable where everybody's at.
Yeah, I think that if you do leave another alliance or something, maybe you should let your officers or let BOSSNASTi or someone. You need to communicate that information. You shouldn't just be leaving an alliance and not saying anything. And like this guy's saying, he's trying to keep a head count of where everyone's at and what's going on. So if you do have a problem or if you do have a concern, bring it up to your leadership, bring it up to your officers. Let BOSSNASTi know. Discuss it with someone. Let someone know that you're going to go here because maybe the activity's not up as high as you want it to be whenever you're on. Maybe you want to do some forts and then you'll be back. Just, communicate that information. I think this is what this gentleman's concerned about. He's like wanting to keep a head count of where everybody's at and what's going on. So it'd be good to communicate that information. If you do have a problem or do decide to want to, go join some forts somewhere or something, just let them know, hey, I'm going to be here. I can't get a teleport. I'll be in the Discord or just something. Keep the communication up. It's the biggest thing. I think is what he's kind of bringing up here, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right, man.
Can I just butt in for a second and say that's also the management? I think management's responsibility to constantly. I know we're checking every day, seeing how our members are doing, asking if they want to do anything, organizing activities, or sending out pings when we're going to be doing forts or whatever. And I think that's like a two-way street, not just on the members who may be new players to the game or not really know what's going on and just frustrated and trying to progress their accounts. I think the membership also needs to be more. Not saying you guys aren't, but the membership also needs to be more transparent and active and engaging their members to make sure they're having a good experience.
I
Yeah,
mean,
that's what I was doing because I'm chilling. My guild is amazing. I'm not having any problems. But I'm I do recognize some people are, you know.
I mean, active. I mean, you can as Brick. I mean, I make sure I go down a list. I mean, I check everybody every time I get on. I can't be on 24/7. So
Yeah,
if
yeah,
someone
servers. I'm
scares
not. I'm not
me,
saying
I'm
that
on.
you
But
aren't. I was just saying that we need to, as officers and R5s, make sure that we are doing that. I'm not saying anyone's not doing that. I was just bringing that up that we also have the responsibility to do that.
thank you, boss. Taking so
Sure.
much time.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I'll just briefly touch on that for a moment, and I do want to get to the next person here too as well. And I obviously appreciate everyone who's still hanging around. I want to be as cognizant of everyone's time as I can, so they can get their question answered or have that opportunity, I should say. The way I kind of view that is actually, and this is for anyone new, right? Or when you hear me say this, it may come off as somewhat, I don't know if I want to say crude or I don't even know if I want to go as far as saying, the darkest, blackest heart ever, because it is not meant that way. But the thing is that what I will say is be cognizant of how thin you are spreading yourself, right? You don't want to overachieve. You don't want to have your hand in too many cookie jars trying to do too much all the time, right? We want to work smarter, not harder. And if you start putting minimums on requirements for players to inform you, even though, yes, it would be great if they did, that is how you can start potentially losing people. Because you're now almost demanding them to say, hey, you need to message me or let someone know when you're leaving, where you're going, why you're going. The challenge is that it's a very slippery slope. I typically like to be a little bit more loose in that regard, where, you know what, if someone wants to message me and tell me that, hey, I'm leaving the Alliance and going here, if they just left one day, okay. I mean, the way I view it is that, don't get me wrong, would it be nice? Of course. But am I going to put a hard expectation or hard restriction on what an individual has to do or what they should do, where I'm going to make them feel some kind of way or maybe put them in an uncomfortable position? Maybe they're willing to let me know why. Maybe they don't want to let me or another person know why. Maybe they also just don't think it's a big deal, right? So I think there's a few ways to really look at it. However, I don't think that we should be over harping, so to speak, on players that leave. If they leave and they join another family alliance, cool. If they leave and join a non-family alliance, cool. It doesn't really affect me, or I would say, in the big grand scheme of things, us as a whole, in really any way, shape, or form. But I do think that we need to be respectful and kind of open in that regard, where we're not trying to put too many things in place, but more so doing things like advising, right? Friendly reminders. That's something most of you probably hear me preach all the time. I would rather do that than try and set another hoop to jump through, put up another hurdle for someone to climb over, because that can just lead to dissatisfaction. And I've seen that happen multiple times. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't put in things that we would recommend or we'd advise, or, we'd say, hey, this is good practice, right, for those that can. I think those things are great. But I just don't think that we should be adding in all these additional layers of people for players or others to do, when at the end of the day, it's almost like assessing a want versus a need, right? Do we really need to do it, or do we just want to do it, right, for convenience or quality of life purposes? And I think this kind of falls more into just we would like or want to do it, but it's not really a need, if that makes sense. Okay. With that being said, let me move on to the next person here, which is my buddy Mike. Okay, Mike hasn't had enough caffeine yet to get started. It's understandable. Not all right. Crazy codes.
Wait, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I had a question.
Oh,
What?
no, you're fine. I'm just going down the list. So if you just joined, and you want to ask,
Sorry, yeah, no, I'm just trying to learn. I'm trying to listen. I'm just a member,
Oh.
but I'm trying to stay up to date.
Okay, cool. No. That's awesome. I think an up to date, engaged member is fantastic. So yeah, no worries at all. I always
No,
like to.
I was previously, prior to doing a jumper, I started my own alliance, did great, loved it. But then when I hopped back into the game, decided I wanted to do a jumper, my wife said, "Hey, you better not be a leader this time around. I don't want to have you that busy because it steals too much time away from me." So this time around, I'm just trying to listen, keep my head low, and watch and enjoy the game.
Awesome. That's a smart woman. But definitely a woman after my own heart for sure. Well, welcome, crazy. All right.
Thank you.
Next I have here is DeBears. Okay. Next I have is Dom. No? Okay. All right, no worries. Next I have is Doctor Strange. It's starting. Oh, Strange. Oh, I was going to say if you're talking, I cannot hear you. I can always come back, or if you want to type it out, you're more than welcome to. Stop. Next, Draco.
No questions for me.
Okay, awesome. Alrighty, Damon. Yeah, sure. How long are we saying? Probably about another 5 to 6 days at the most, and then we will definitely announce though well in advance. So I'm gonna try to announce at least 2 days in advance to give everyone more lead time. Honu. Sorry for my dog. This guy's just he's a maniac right now. Honu, no? Okay. No worries. Just Con. Stop. Go. 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 Then stop. Okay, let me see here. Con. Oh, sorry. Con said no. Okay. How about Kong? Kong. I probably should announce that before. Sorry, I'm also going off voice chatting for those of you here. I'm sorry, maybe they posted in jump chat. Okay, nope. All right. Okay, let me go next here is, how about Laylee? Am I saying that right? Okay, we'll go next here to the first of the two Lexis, Lexi Strange.
No, I'm all good, thanks. No questions.
All right, okay. No worries. All right, Lexi Love.
I think I'm good. I'm good too. Just ready to jump. Ready to get some more rewards and jump. But I think I'm good. If I come up with anything, I'll just type it in the message in the chat.
Okay, awesome. No, sounds good. Alrighty. Yes, I think us having a little bit of that eager beaver in us to try and get out of First Kingdom is always, you get in first 24 hours, lots of hype, lots of excitement, adrenaline's rushing. You get into day 2 and you're like, all right. You got to do some more caves, got to do some more villages, and it's just a grind.
Yeah.
It is. Okay. Mad Irishman. I was gonna say Madershman, but that wouldn't have sounded right.
No, I'm just sitting here killing time,
Okay.
catching up with everybody, just listening there.
Awesome, awesome. Well, welcome, welcome. All right.
Thank you.
Let me see. Who do I got next? Minnie. Minnie's like, Minnie was waiting. Perfectly executed, Minnie. Perfectly executed. All right. Mantra.
Hey everyone, I had a question about the Easter event. It looks like we're probably going to be jumping in the middle of that event. Do we know if we'll be able to finish it after we jump, or if we need to wait to spend the 7K gems after we jump as opposed to before?
I'm going to be honest. I do not know the answer to that question. What I will say, what
You'll be fine.
Oh, it should carry. Yeah, I was gonna say my assumption is that if it's game wide, there's a good chance it'll carry over. However, I do not know. Now, one way to potentially test that would be to make a jumper tomorrow or even today, right? Just make an alt account, wait for the event to start, and then jump to a new kingdom that's out, right? Maybe see if you see anything. But if people are already saying it carries over, then and it feels like we're getting some confident
100%
answers.
carries over.
Then that might be good.
I made a jumper account on the Halloween event. It all carried over. It always has because the event is literally the same in every kingdom, same time, same day.
Okay.
So it's always the same.
Well, awesome. Okay. Well, no, thanks, Britt, Lexi, Love, and Kong for the confirmations.
Thank you.
They'll not give us the rewards. That'd be dope if they did that. Okay. Sorry. Next person here, Pamela. Sure. And like I said, guys, or I should say, everyone. Let me provide a gender neutral transition there. If anyone's just joining, feel free if you want to type your question out, or if you want to start typing it up, or maybe just kind of have it ready for when we come to you. Feel free. I'm going to go down the list all the way down to Apollon, and then I'll go back up for anyone new that has joined that we haven't had a chance to call on, and then I'll just open the floor up generally for anyone who wants to hit the voice button first. Let me see. Do you know a different jumper project that started at the same time as ours? What do we do if another jumper project in the same kingdom as ours? There are a few that have. We're in a chat right now. I'm actually in a chat with two groups. So I have two group chats going on right now. One has, I think, 3 or 4 projects, or 2 or 3 in them, and then one has another. So I am working on coordinating final landings to try and set us up to be in that best position, right, where we're able to be the only, if not arguably the overwhelmingly largest in the kingdom. There are a couple projects that are going on right now. There is the possibility there might be some crossover, but at the moment it doesn't seem like that will be the case. That's just my kind of early estimations. As far as what do we do if another jump does, well, I think the most important thing would be to treat it the same way that we would when we're reaching out to new players, right? So we would want to take the time to have those conversations with them, kind of figure out what are they looking to build? Are we able to maybe find some middle ground where, they might still be able to kind of retain themselves? It's not really a matter of assimilating people, right? It's not a matter of us, even when we go into the kingdom, it's not a matter of them saying, because it's going to happen. It happens every time. Right. Any project that is a couple alliances, or if they're big, you'll eventually have some people or alliances that'll reach out to you and say, hey, can we join the project? Can we join the family? Can we adopt your tags? Can we adopt your name? Right. Because to them, they may think, well, it may provide them cover or some safe haven, right? Being under the umbrella, if you will. But it's not really about doing that. It's really about allowing for people to have their own individuality, especially for alliances that are just not a part of our group. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that we're closing off how we interact or how we build relationships and work with people in the kingdom. Apollon, sure. No, thanks for tuning in. But as far as the groups, it's kind of the same approach, right? It's a matter of trying to figure out what do they want, what are they looking for to build a kingdom up, and is there any overlap? Is there any crossover for what they're hoping to do versus what we're currently doing? Obviously, this is in the assumption that we're the largest, right? Then it's a matter of saying, well, look, this is our hope for what we want to build. We'd love if you'd be willing to try it out, and see how it goes, so to speak. And then you kind of go from there in the conversation. Sometimes getting into a voice call with their lead or their leaders, I've done this before for other projects, can be even a better starting point. But I think the hope is not necessarily to compromise what we're doing, right? Or compromise in any way as far as what our hopes and goals are for the kingdom, but really more so trying to find a way to work together and this is only if the other group is super hostile and they just want to do things their own way, they don't care to work with anyone. Then in that case, it's more of maybe preparing and putting ourselves in a position to where we can limit their growth in a lot of ways. If it breaks out into a fight or maybe a small civil war, don't get me wrong, those things can happen. But that's really why we're going to do the best job we can to prepare as far ahead, right? And if we have to put contingencies in place, like for example, over the next day or two, I'll probably start implementing or activating our departments, right? So people that have filled out like a War Department application, right? We'll probably start doing some stuff with them, giving them some things to do. We'll probably start setting up our recruiting department, our intelligence department, right? And we'll, over the next couple of days, those are things that are going to be done. So that way we can have those contingencies and we'll know how to react. We'll probably set up our rapid response team maybe a day or two before we get into Final Kingdom, right? Where we'll basically take the strongest players in the group and give them a dedicated role, and that'll kind of be our response team once we go in. There's a lot of things that we haven't even done yet and that I haven't implemented or started, just because I'm really trying to focus on getting through the player distribution, and we have plenty of time, right? We still have 5 to 6 days, so we're not in a rush, but I do think it's good if we can start hammering some of these things out earlier rather than later, which is what part of that hope is, to try and do some of those things today. So that way we're just able to stay ahead. But as far as working with the other groups, that at the moment is probably the best answer I can give, because we just don't know more than what we currently know right now. But like I said, I think the hope would be if they want, best case scenario, they're cool with trying it out our way, and we're able to kind of work together and treat them like we would any independent alliance, then yeah, that'd be great. And I think that's the hope. So yeah, I hope that answers the question without redundantly saying hope 3 times that I did. All right, next person, Primal.
No questions here, bro.
Alrighty. Okay, sorry. Sage Saga?
No, I'm good.
Good, okay. No worries. Okay, how about Sorrel or Sorel? Oh, good, okay. How about, I almost wanted to say Thanky, but I think it's Tacky or Thacky, one of those? Okay, they already answered. Okay, cool, awesome. Apologies if I butchered there. I'm trying to say all variations in case I'm able to cover myself. Trajan?
I'm doing some villages.
Oh, you're good. Okay, awesome. No worries. All right, Warzy. Warzy's all fine. Okay. Alrighty, let me. Where's the Yoru? Okay, so yours is good. Nova. I've got the last 2 at the bottom. Okay.
Sorry, was trying to log into my Discord here. Well, I was kind of curious, what kind of roles? I know you were just kind of talking about roles that you were planning to distribute or open up, or different departments. What essentially are you looking for in just more of a detail, if you have kind of like a roadmap already in your mind?
Yeah, so a lot of this stuff is written up already. We actually have channels already set up and everything. It's really just a matter of once we start activating them. The departments in their shortest form are more global roles. So, I'm a big believer that we can globalize a lot of things instead of having things be handled internally within Alliance and then just having the possibility, unfortunately, of having a lot of overlap. So I think having dedicated points of contact can be a lot more efficient way to go about doing things kingdom-wide. So for example, if we have recruiters or if we have someone in diplomacy, things that we've done before where, you know, we've assigned one person per province and they're just the main diplomat. So they work with all the alliances in that province. I've done it before where one person who just had a lot of time available handled diplomacy for the whole kingdom. So they communicated with each kingdom, had a spreadsheet of who was in which province, data on them, notes on what the most recent conversation was, and the most recent status on the relationship was. So it really just depends, I think, on who. If we're able to maybe split it up, and like, so when I had it before where we had one rep per province, we had channels that were dedicated. So we had like province 1, province 2, all the way to province 6 for zone 1, and the dedicated reps would basically use those channels to provide status updates on who they're talking to, who they've done. They'd give a summary report of, hey, here's all the alliances, here's the lead, are they in the Discord, are they not, what's the status update on them. And then sure, Lexi, no worries. Oh, sorry, I should say Lexi Strange because there's multiple Lexis here. But we would do things like that. And so for the departments, for example, you might have an internal war rep within your alliance, right? They might just be someone who's very proficient in doing PvP. They can answer a lot of those related questions. If anyone has questions, you can dedicate that person to go there. That is a role that you would arguably have internally and then externally kingdom-wide. When you do things like intelligence gathering, right? You can make the argument that you may do something like that internally, even if you're just kind of keeping track of, donations or helps, right? Who's active per day, depending on how detailed you really want to get in with that. But usually that type of a position is more external. So you're doing it more kingdom-wide to track alliance power growth, top 300 projected power. You're doing comparisons because you have accounts in other kingdoms as well. So, you're just leveled up high enough to look at their leaderboards and basically do those. And a few other things. But essentially, players can apply for those if they want. They just have to go to the Jump Positions channel. We have a nice list of tasks and responsibilities I think Ghost had set up that we worked on. And people can kind of get a little bit of information on what goes into that. There's also a tutorial video that I've added on as well, where it's basically a guide that I put out on what to kind of do in each of those positions, what the expectations are. We're always recruiting for those, just like we're still recruiting for leads and more officers now. But yeah, I think I said a lot, but I hope that answers the question.
No, that's great. I think it's really interesting because this is like the first jump project, at least to this magnitude, that I'm part of. I mean, I've jumped plenty of times with other people, but I mean, it's not as organized. So, I mean, it's refreshing to see it. So that's great.
Thank you. So nice to hear. Whew. Sorry, just you're making me blush, shedding some slight tears. And that was not sarcasm. That was healthy excitement exuding from my body. Don't get me wrong. I think anyone appreciates hearing. He's like blush nasty. I think anyone at all who does something and I think puts in as much time as, and I'll just use myself as an example, right? That I put in to projects that I am a part of and involved in from day one. Always appreciate, any level of feedback, any level of recognition or acknowledgement. I think that's always great. It's one of the reasons I feel so strongly about doing it for people that are doing kind of kingdom-wide tasks, showing that appreciation. Examples like people that we shouted out when we were in the beginning and that were helping out with us to recruit. They were posting ads. They were reaching out on Facebook for people. They were on Reddit. And there was a few posts I made, one in particular as an announcement that really gave a big shout out to a lot of people. Me shouting out Rico, who's been helping us on the Allies to Join channel by just having someone that manages. I think, doing that where we kind of put people in positions where they can be effortlessly successful, right? Where we're not giving them 5 or 10 things to do, but sometimes we can give them one task to do that does require consistent work on it, but it's not extremely intensive, right? Where they can operate at 100% efficiency pretty easily, is a lot, I think, a better way of going about it than trying to kind of give multiple people multiple tasks. Unfortunately, if you're in a position like myself, then or a lead or maybe a department manager, maybe to a little bit lesser extent, you're probably doing, you're probably wearing multiple hats or doing multiple things. And, for me, it's sometimes just a matter of waiting to find people that are interested in doing tasks. I'm not a big believer in ever forcing things upon anyone, but I do believe in sending out friendly reminders and letting people know, hey, here's some things that do need to be done. If anyone's interested in doing them, right? Here's a task board. We'll eventually come out with that as well at a later time. But as far as appreciating or kind of recognizing the structure and the organization we have, that definitely brings warm, tickling feelings to my heart. I do feel to a very big extent that no one really does projects the way I do. And you can take that however you want. I take that as just knowing the field well enough for how long I've been playing and doing projects to where I just feel extremely confident and assured of myself and what I can bring on kind of a logistical and a management side, at least for that one area. And I take a lot of pride in that. There's a lot of time that goes into doing this, and oftentimes I'm pretty much on and off all day from the moment I wake up until I go to sleep, right? And I'm sure others are as well, depending on how much time they put in. So for me, it is very much a full-time job, which, some people wonder how I'm able to still have time to do YouTube videos, work my full-time job, hang out with the fam. The best advice I could give there is just time management. Sometimes it's just important to kind of know when you have time to do something, when you don't have time to do something, and taking advantage of when you do have time to do something to make the most and get the most out of it. So anyways, without me ranting too much on my tangent, thank you, Nova, for the kind words. I do appreciate. Booty, rocking everywhere. No one's down for the jam.
I like that. I do have maybe a couple questions here. One, you kind of hit on like way earlier when everybody was talking about alliance members moving this and that. I have had people since I stepped into an officer role in Draco's lines. I've done this many a times. I've been away for a little while now, but this isn't my first project, and I've led a couple of my own. But this is like one of the bigger ones, of course. Yes, this is a nice project. But to not get away from the question, I have had people ask me if like the alliances that they were assigned were going to be like their like official alliance, if they could move around, things like that. And I know you'd already touched on it. This came from a member of my alliance. He was asking. He was like, he couldn't make the chat here, so I told him I'd speak on his behalf. But he was wondering, if like if these were like 100% where they have to be. Like say they were in a different alliance and then they've moved to one and they're enjoying it there. Their previous alliance, they didn't really, they weren't really having a great time. I know we've already touched on this, but I did want to, let his question be known and put it out there. So I guess what he was more or less was asking is if they could move around freely between the family. And I know that I've spoke to you personally in a DM about it. You mentioned giving it a try, giving it your best effort, putting your best foot forward. And I've kind of I've spoken that out. I've said you just try to give your alliance a try. And then so he, I guess more or less was asking like, after he'd tried it out and after he went through for these past couple days, if they weren't having a great time, like what steps should they take? Should they talk to you? Should they talk to the previous officers? And more so, could they move around freely between the families? I know we're all family. We're all one big group here. I know we have our individual alliances. We're concerned about our individual growths on our accounts and such. But as a group, as a whole, I'd feel personally, that you could move around. Like say, even as I'm an officer, if I needed to go help another alliance or something, I just tell Draco, like, hey man, I'm gonna help these guys out, get them a few rallies going or something. So I guess the question I'm really trying to get at is like, are we allow free range of motion between the families? This wasn't my question. This was a gentleman's in my clans that speaks a different language, and he wanted me to address this and ask this, and I'll voice this back to him so he can use a translator in game. But so yeah, that's pretty much a general question there. It's like, do we have free range of like movement between the family?
Okay. So, first and foremost, yes, anytime I think it's great asking a question, especially if it's for someone who just can't either represent themselves for a language barrier or if maybe they're just not able to attend. So, I do appreciate you taking it upon yourself to ask for him, or I should say for the player. With that in mind, I would say there's not really, I would say, any kind of hard restriction beyond what that alliance is. And I don't know if I want to say willing to allow, because that doesn't necessarily come off well. I would say what they're okay with doing, right? Is that I think the hope is, right, to what you said as well, that we would love for players to play. And don't get me wrong, I've got a couple of these questions myself, where people have reached out and said, "Hey, am I able to move, or am I able to go somewhere else?" Because yeah, I'm still talking. I'll be done in a sec. Where they've said, "Hey, am I able to go to this alliance for whatever reason, or would I be able to look for another one?" And I think there's just a couple circumstances that really go into that. Which one, I guess to name a few. One, I think some players just kind of already have this perception in their mind on what they may think is an alliance worth staying in, even if they haven't given that leader or that officer team an opportunity to show them, what the alliance could be. So I think part of it is premature, if not maybe most of it. If it's for what I would consider to be an actionable or kind of tangible reason, like maybe they have a friend that's playing in another alliance and they just want to play with them. Okay, that doesn't seem to be a big deal. I've already made a couple switches and swaps for players in some alliances here or there, because they asked and said, "Hey, I have a friend that's playing over here," or "I have a friend that's playing here." And usually my first thought is, okay, well, let me look at the player distribution sheet so I can try and place the person in maybe the lowest ranked or the lower ranked of the two. Or not lower ranked, but the lower capacity, lower activity members, based on what is showing on the sheet and also what RoK has updated on the Allies to Join channel. So again, and that's very minor. It's not as though a lot of people have done that, but a few people have came to me. As far as once we get into Final Kingdom and you're going assigned, usually what I'm telling people is more or less what you've said, is, again, give your alliance an opportunity, play there for a little while, if it's a week or two, however long, see how it goes, right? Really allow that team the opportunity to show you whether or not they're organized, or they're doing things on time or engaging the players, whatever it may be. Allow them that opportunity, instead of kind of drawing an earlier quick conclusion. And then I would say at that point, usually what I tell people is, at that point, if you just want to really go try, because there will be some players who, again, maybe they just don't gel with the current system, or whether it's the management system, whether it's maybe the way the alliance does things. And that's not to say that what they're doing is bad. It could be done really good, but that person just, again, maybe likes a different style of management or leadership. Maybe that person wants to leave because they're just noticing that there's not a lot of active players online at the time they're online, right? There can always be reasons that are beyond what some might defaultly lead to, which is that they're leaving because leadership sucks or something like that, right? It's usually, more often than not, what I usually find is it's not that. Some people may say it's that, and I'm talking more so in what I would consider to be an organized project as this, where we're vetting leads and they actually know what they're doing. Like if someone came to me and they were in an alliance, let me just say one of the 6 alliances currently, right, outside of the new lead Wraithen joining, if someone came to me and they're like, "Hey, I've been playing here a couple days, my lead isn't doing anything," I would be a little behest to believe that. However, I would ask them for information, or to show me anything that's maybe allowing for them to paint their picture a little more clearly, so I could better address it. But I would say, in short, if players want to lead, part of that will depend on, is their capacity for that. Some alliance leaders may not want to accept people that are just jumping in between alliances, right? So you have to look at it from the other side as well, not just the player who is asking about jumping. Now, if it's a situation where they just want to try another alliance out, that's different. That definitely will happen. Usually, it doesn't happen that much, but it typically happens every project. They're always going to have some people that, for whatever reason, they may want to try another alliance out. I personally think that's completely fine. However, I do ask everyone that they, at minimum, at least respectfully, show a level of due diligence to allow some time in the alliance that they've been assigned. And then if they really, want a transfer, so to speak, or want to move, just, reach out to your lead and let them know. And just say, hey, look, I've been here a week or two. I would really just like to try out another alliance, nothing against you. Maybe, like I said, maybe there's just not a lot of active players online during their time. The average player, I don't think, is really going to say that. I think it's more of the grinders that might do something like that because they want to be able to participate in events during the time that they're available. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If you're only able to be on an hour or 2 hours a day, why would you as an individual not want to make the most of your time? I think that's completely fair. Though, at the same time, we may have limitations, right? Maybe they want to go to an alliance that is at max capacity, and they can't join. But that alliance does have a lot of players on during their time. Well, maybe they'll have to wait for a spot to open. Maybe that alliance, for whatever reason, isn't accepting any bigger players because we have our hard caps in place to work on balancing and evening out alliance power to try and keep working on that balance where power can be as close as we can make it. So there are a few factors, but I would say the way you approach it seems to be appropriate.
Okay, that answers the question pretty well.
Yes, sorry, that was a lot.
His question. Yeah, no. I mean, it hit it right on that, which is fine. I appreciate all the information, so that way I can better explain to people. And, as an officer, if people come to me and they have a question I can't answer, I like to get it out there, to people that maybe can. So again, thank you for that answer. And now to my question.
Sure.
My question is for you, is for you,
Okay.
because I just joined this project towards the end. I joined once before earlier in the project. I believe I ended up deciding I wasn't going to play, and then later I was like, I kind of miss RoK. So then I kind of came back, and I just met the you guys were jumping that day. So I'm not 100% certain on exactly what your role is. I know you're the manager and such. But I guess what my question is once we get to the Final Kingdom, once we get going, once we get the ball rolling, what is your role going to be? Are you still going to be the lead, project manager? Are we still going to be talking to you? Are you still going to be organizing things for us, or are you going to kind of give it to us and then let us get to do our thing within our family? And then are you going to go start another project, or what's your role, I guess, once we get to Final Kingdom and start progressing and moving along?
Yeah. Again, great question. I posted a funny GIF in voice chat. But in short, and actually someone hit me with this yesterday that I was talking with, and I actually thought it was a really good description of just another way to kind of present exactly where I am in the picture. So in short, right, the way that we have always described everything to the player base up front is that the hierarchy is more of so I guess an easy way to kind of describe it is think of me more like an R6. So it's where my position is really purely pretty much in the same capacity you see me in now, but adding on that I just have a level of oversight on the group as a whole. And therefore, once we get into the kingdom, right, the kingdom as a whole, I think it's important that we have oversight. I think it's important that we have people who can filter through what we're doing to try and make as you often hear me say, right, good decisions and the best decisions possible that we can for the group. Because it's not just about looking at how we're going to approach the kingdom, but it's really, in addition to that, looking at the promises that we made, right? If I put out an ad and I make a jump project and I say, hey, this is what our ad is and this is what our goals are, those are promises that we're making to the player base. And I think it's important that, above all else, there is someone that can be objective, that can be unbiased, which is another reason why you don't see me leading an alliance. And that's not to say that anyone who's leading an alliance would. It's to take away that thought that people may think of if I was leading a project and at the same time leading an alliance, right? Some people could say I'm double dipping. Some people could say that maybe a decision came out that could be biased or favorited towards that. And so it's really to eliminate that notion that could be made. And then, in addition, looking at me, it's really, and I've explained this before as well a few times, but I'm always happy to explain it as many times, is that the way that the system operates, and Crazy Caffeinated Mike, he's been with me before a few times as an officer, along with Queen, who's a lead. She's been with me as a lead in 2 projects that I did in RoK. Ghost, he's been a lead with me in 2 projects in Infinity Kingdom. And then we have, a few officers that have been officers with me in previous projects that I did back in 2020 going into 2021. So there is a good core of people here, and also members as well that have played with me before. Lexi Love was someone that was with me in a Kingdom before, and oh god, I can't remember everyone offhand. So I apologize if I'm missing someone that's at least in the voice call. But just to give a few references, is that the whole? Let me not say the whole. The way the structure is that everything we do starts off at a council level. So if we want to have a conversation, if we want to have a discussion, if people want to provide feedback or have suggestions, right? All of those things will start out at a council level. They could even start out at an officer level. However, when it comes to decision makings, right, a lot of what we've done is to kind of avoid that. So if you think about the ad, if you think about looking at the jump plan channel that we have here, a lot of the direction that we're already going in or will be going in has already been laid out. So it minimizes the need to kind of have a lot of those decision-based discussions, right, where we can focus more on bigger picture because we've already laid out, hey, this is how we're going to do MGs. Every leader's on board. Hey, this is how we're going to do PvP in the kingdom. Every leader's already on board. So these are things that I take the time to explain to all the leads in a voice interview that I do with them, a second one if needed. We talk about in announcements, we'll talk about in these meetings, we'll talk about in the jump announce that I'll do in the jump plan channel as well. And we'll start getting more detailed because some of them are kind of more broad and vague standards, if you will, or goals going forward. But for me, the last thing I usually tell, and this is something I've gone over with all the leads, is that at any point in time I just reserve the right to make a decision or a final decision at my discretion. Now that doesn't mean, and when people hear that, trust me, I know how that sounds. What I will say is that the people who are here that have came back to be leads in this project and work with me, they know the system. They know how well the system works. And usually the example I sometimes give to people is if you're looking at 2 polarizing figures just at face value, and you look at someone like Hitler, and then you look at someone like Gandhi, and you're like, well, which person would you choose to run a country and make decisions for the people in that country? Well, most people I would imagine would probably go with Gandhi. No offense to Hitler, and I think having someone who is, I think the right terminology would be like a benevolent leader, right, or a benevolent, I don't want to say dictator because that unfortunately just has so much negative connotation that comes with it at face value. But I would just say that is a good way of looking at it. Is that my position is really here to make sure we're staying on track, that there's a level of oversight, and that we are. I was going to say the first word I heard was Hitler. So yeah, and again, I'm giving a super extreme example, right, on 2 polarizing on kind of two sides of the fence there. But that is really probably the best way that I can explain it. Is that it's never going to be me ever coming out and doing something where I'm making an announcement or saying something that we didn't already talk about or isn't already in the plan, right? That everyone knows. But at the same time, like you've heard me say before, having departments, having teams that we have set up to have those discussions and have those conversations, so we can all be informed. And whether it's me making an announcement or one of the other leads making an announcement, if they would like, which we usually always, afford that opportunity. It's just sometimes they're fine with me making the announcements. Is that for me, in my position, I just, again, if you look at my resume for the amount of projects I've ran, to add on to what I just said, I think that if the system we're running is somewhat unique. Right, not every kingdom, not every project can run this type of a system, because it would require who's ever going to kind of be at that helm position to just have enough or a lot of knowledge and experience in managing things, sustaining things all the way through. Unfortunately, in all of my projects thus far, they've either led to, I'm trying to think how to categorize this, they've either led to whales that impacted how much we could do, mutinies from leaders and officers that thought they could do better or knew more, and now those kingdoms are failing when they were at a golden age when I was there leading and managing, or oh god, what's the third one here? Or migrating groups came in and wanted to enact their system, thinking it was better than the current system that we had at the moment, and then the kingdom still failed. So what I will say is that it's never my intent to leave a project. Sometimes it's immovable circumstances that are caused. What I will say is every project I've ever ran has always had the highest percentage chance to be successful. Every project I've ever ran has always had initial majority presence or control, if you will, over Zone 1. We've always worked well with all others in that kingdom. And 6 out of the 7 projects I ran were all able to get majority control of the kingdom by making it all the way to the final zone and capturing the final objective, if I'm going off of the 2 games I've done projects in. The challenge sometimes just comes from the internal family trauma, which is something that will sadly always plague, I feel, almost any project. But to try to minimize on some of those things is why we do the things we do now, why we have these town halls, why people ask the questions that they do, why were opportunities for me to give more of an insight. But yeah, anyways, in short, that's basically my position, is more of an R6. But as far as, I'm not here to micromanage the alliances, right? It's more of, hey, here's guidelines because everyone already agrees and everyone wants to be a part of this. So it's more of how can I assist, how can I support the alliances in their capacities. But for people like Crazy Caffeinated Mike, Draco, right, any of the other leads, right, they are literally managing their alliances how they see fit. I may come out with recommendations or give guidelines or helpful resources, and I know that because we've all talked, they've joined this project because they like what it's been promoted as, what's in the advertisement. They are on board for that, along with all of us having, me doing a voice interview with them to confirm that, yeah, they are on board for this, and hey, here are the expectations that come along with that. So I think those are great ways that we can get on that same page. So in most forms, I don't want to work harder, I want to work smarter. But yeah, again, I know I said a lot there. I hope that answers the question, because I think I touched on a few things.
Yeah, it did answer the majority of what I was asking. I did. You might have said, but I might have missed. Like you said, there was a lot of information there. But do you plan to stay with us throughout the entirety of the kingdom as like the R6 figure? Like as we go to Lost Temple, if we make, like, if the kingdom succeeds, we go take the Lost Temple. Our structure takes the stronghold on the kingdom, which is what we want. It's why we're doing this, right? So say this project succeeds, which I feel like we've got a great start, and it does feel like this is going to be a great project. And I feel like we'll take over the kingdom with the amount of people we have. It seems like we're for the most part pretty active, and there is some people within our group that are spenders and can defend the kingdom. I personally brought a friend of mine that I played with previously, and we both spent quite a bit of money on one of our projects, and ultimately, the kingdom failed because of internal issues. But that's besides the point. And we ended up jumping, and I ended up like quitting with like a near 30 million account going into before KVK one. But that's not really what I'm getting at. I feel like we're going to be all right. Say that all this happens, and are you planning to stay like with us the whole time as the overseer, or like once we get to a certain point, is that when you're going to go try to do another project once you see that we've succeeded, or like ultimately what is your end game here? Is kind of what I'm. It's kind of the question I think that might have not got answered. Like, do you plan to stay the whole time, or what do you plan on doing after we succeed and do what we need to do?
Yeah, tough skill. Yeah, no. Again, good question. I did briefly mention it within, but yeah, the hope is to stay as long as possible, as long as the kingdom is thriving and it's active and it's not dead. Then yeah, the hope is to be here forever, essentially. For me.
Okay, so
Yeah.
not to interrupt you on that. So would you plan then, say that our kingdom does good? Do you plan to join us at a later date with an account? Do you plan to like come into the kingdom, and kind of be there with one of your accounts? I don't know how many accounts you have. Like ultimately, say the kingdom does thrive and it does do what you want it intended to do as the overseer. Do you plan then to like come in and join us, or are you just going to continue just to be like that figure, that one ultimate, like I don't know. I guess like you've said, the overseer. Do you continue to do that, or what is your plan then?
Well, yeah. I mean, I have an account that I have recently started playing again, but at a very minimal level. So I'm just not sure. I mean, for me, kind of being split between two games, I just don't know if I'd be able to hardcore actively play an account. But at the same time, I don't think me playing an account is, necessarily where 100% of my strengths lie on what I can bring. But if I am able to, at some point in time, reactivate my passion for replaying my main, then of course, I definitely would love to. I don't think I would probably be able to bring it over until KVK3, just because there would be more people actively playing more than me, where I just wouldn't feel right to bring my account over and take up one of those spots. I'd rather just wait for for Season of Conquest to come and then bring the account over. But yeah, if I'm able to, sure, I'd love to. I think I think, and this is something that might be hard for some. I don't know if I want to say hard, but it may be. Maybe hard might be an okay word. Let me say difficult. It may be difficult for some people to see or understand that a leader's job first and foremost is to lead. Right? It is not to necessarily play. It's not to, and that doesn't mean not play at all. But it's not. It doesn't mean you have to have the strongest account. It doesn't mean you need to be the most well-versed or most knowledgeable or most experienced person in every single area that ever there was. I personally am really of the opinion that if you're going to lead, you need time to lead. Most of us I shouldn't say most of us, but for anyone here who has been in R5, you most likely know how much time goes into just that position, right? Let alone being an officer. And a lot of what you're doing has nothing to do with playing your account. It's usually everything outside of playing your account. It's all the managing, it's the messaging, it's doing spreadsheets, it's speaking to players, you're doing customer service, really, right? You're troubleshooting, and you're being tech support at times. All of those things are not you actually clicking the button to progress your account. And that is usually what comes in to be the most time-consuming portion to kind of make everything work, right? Keep the cogs spinning, if you will. Sure, Nova. No, thanks, man. Thanks for tuning in. And so for me, sure, if I'm able to play, that'd be great. Um, but even if I'm not able to play at all, and I at least have an account, with all the fog unfogged, at least until Chronicle hits, and I'm able to join in to view KVK, I still think my value is so much more than me playing an account. I would rather support and assist players, officers, and leaders that are able to commit as much time to their account as I would love to commit to my own. But at the same time, I don't feel that that's really where my personal strength lies. Even though I would love to play an account as much as the next person, I think when it comes to really like utilizing and grasping everyone's potential, I think it could be a lot. Not that I think, but I think it's a lot more valuable looking at it that way. And like I said, that might be hard or difficult for some to understand because most players have kind of been programmed from a very early point when playing RoK and other types of games where a good amount of players' viewpoints is that, well, you need to be the strongest if you're a lead, or if you're an officer, you need to be one of the strongest players in the game, or how do you not know how to do this, or how do you not know how to do that? And sometimes it comes at you from all different angles. So yeah, I don't know if that really 100% answers it, but I hope it at least gives. I feel like that's the best I can
Yeah.
do right now.
Yeah, I mean, I assume that you're just going to remain the overseer for as long as the project continues progressing. So, if that answered it, I have no further questions. I apologize for taking up a lot of time on these questions. So, you can go ahead and move on to the next person. If anyone else has questions, I just wanted to, get a better understanding on your, I guess your role. I appreciate it, and yeah, that's all I have.
Sure. Yeah. No. Of course. I appreciate you asking, buddy. Okay. Let me go back to the top. I can't realize I'm already at 2 hours and 20 minutes here. I am shocked that we still have this many people here that long, and we were able to get somewhere around 50. I want to say real quick before I just generally open the floor up. The amount of people that have been joining voice calls now every Tuesday, I know we're still going to be trying to work in another one as well during the week based on the availability for that we did for the poll. But I do want to say that anytime I see a lot of people, and I think Mike can probably speak to this effect because he's been with me before for two, and I even think Rizzo could speak to this as well because she's an R6 and another in an alliance in Infinity Kingdom with me, or I should say was with me while I was there. Though seeing this amount of people in voice chat this early during the jump project gives me a lot of optimism. I've been in projects before where only 10 to 20 people join voice meetings, and we may have had 400 to 500 to 600 people that were confirmed. What's funny is that the group that we had, and I think Mike knows this, that we had in 2001, we had 70, 80, 90 people every week for a very consistent period of time that were joining voice calls, and it was amazing to see that level of engagement. This project early on, I think with where we're at now, definitely gives me a lot of hope based on how many people we have that are joining, that are engaged, that want to hear, that want to be more involved. And I think that's something that definitely should not be underestimated or undervalued. Okay, I will commit another 8 minutes, 7 or 8 minutes, because I'm actually pushing 2.5 hours. I wasn't expecting to be here for this long, but it obviously has helped a lot, so I definitely won't take anything back on that. But if anyone does have something else that they would like to, ask or type in, feel free. This is the time.
Hey, boss, I have a question.
Yeah.
Or maybe one night, like, I don't know, 1 week when there's like literally, usually like 15, 20 people in VC, in the evening times. Maybe if you have some free time, you could hop in, maybe join join us in on one night, just have some good old fun time with us. Usually Mike or Con, usually they're live streaming either a movie or Maybe they're doing, live streaming their account and RoK. Maybe you can join in and have some good old family time with us.
Oh yeah, no, 100%, man. I mean, there was a few times I think I joined in for a little bit on two, but I think like anyone, right? It really just depends if I have the time as much as if anyone else has the time available. I think it's great that so many of you guys are just hanging out in voice, or Mike's been doing a great job, and I think and obviously Con and a few others you mentioned that I'm seeing, and anytime I see a bunch of people in voice, I always think it's so dope that people are really taking advantage of it and really want to be there, and even using both of the channels at times throughout the days. And yeah, of course, if there's ever time where I'm able to add in a few, add in a little bit to go in, of course, I'd love to. Sometimes if I'm just not able to, usually it's because I'm either just busy, at home with the fam, or if I'm, working on getting some logistical organizational stuff set up. But yeah, man, if I am ever able to, definitely. And I think once we start getting some of the like the weekly events set up, I'll definitely join in. Yeah, I know. I'll definitely join in on some of the karaoke nights or things like that. We actually used to do that in a couple of our projects, so I'll get down with some of the rap verses. I don't really know if I could sing with my pipes, are not as luscious as they used to be in my younger years, but yeah. So if I'm able to, definitely. Alrighty. So let me see here.
Boss.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically you have a council, right? So let's say there's a problem inside the alliances. So the council speaks to you, and then you bring out like how can I explain, like a strategy to solve the problem, right? So you will always be part of like all the alliances that's going to New Kingdom. If you understand what I mean.
I do. No, I do. So I think part of it just depends, right? Like it kind of goes back into what I was saying, where I'm not really here to kind of over micromanage, but if like I have full confidence, I think any of the leads would be able to address something internally within their alliance, which is really where those people should be going towards first. And even if people reach out to me, which many do, one of the things I typically include in my response is, well, hey, have you reached out to your officer first? Have you reached out to your leader first? I think it's important that we're very consistent with that. Is, your first point of contact really should be, in most cases, if not all, reaching out to your alliance team, whether that be your officer, then your lead, or your lead. And that's really who you should be going towards first. I'm always here and available, of course, as a backup resource. And if something's happening in an alliance, then, I think that should be handled by their lead. If a lead wants to come to me and say, hey boss, how would you approach this? Or hey, would you maybe have done this differently? Or hey, what do you think about me addressing it this way? I'm of course happy to help. And I feel confident enough that most of the time, I may have a different approach or something that I can add on, whether maybe they already have a great approach already. And I'm just saying, man, this looks fantastic. I would do this exactly how you're doing it. And a couple of times I've done that. But like I said, I'm really here to support and to assist, but really be there to make sure that we are keeping our word, right? That we are staying on track for the promises that we've made to the people that have joined. Because far too often, usually what I'm seeing is, just that kind of falling off the wagon. And the players are usually the ones who are the victims. The players are usually the ones who take the brunt of that fallout. And that sucks. And I don't think I just don't like that feeling. I don't like the feeling of a player being subjected to a situation in which they didn't really ask for, or they may not have fully understood why or how it happened, right? For how it kind of came to that point. And that's in the same breath not to say that any of the officers or the leads or any players have any ill intent. It's just, I do think it's important to have someone there that people can look to and say, no matter what is happening, if a lead steps down or someone went rogue or officers are doing this or that, I can always fall back on this person because I know they're going to be consistent just 100% all the way through. And that's not to say that no one else will, but just that you can have a common denominator. right, that you can look to at all times that, you know, is kind of in a position already to be objective and to be unbiased, I think that helps a lot. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, boss, can you hear me?
Yeah. What's up, Bears?
The Bears. Can you do like a beginner's town hall where we can ask, like, just pick your brain on some stuff like we're just learning, or I don't know. Yeah, you have a lot of knowledge to share, and I think it'd be a chance for some folks on here where we can just pick your brain and where this is a little more in depth.
Sure. No, it's a good idea. So I think what you're kind of referring to is like what we'd consider to be like workshops. So we definitely are going to be doing those, and we're actually going to be doing some that are more PvP oriented, where, you know, maybe someone like Mike, Crazy Caffeinated, will come in and speak. Maybe other people will speak on certain areas that they're just very proficient in. I think doing those types of things are great. I can record those, I can upload those, and those can be reference points for the group. We can also send those out in King's Mails as well. So yeah, that is definitely a plan, 100% to do, and I do appreciate you asking.
I would love it if we could do like a week 1, week 2, week 3, and then until we get rolling. Just week 1's so critical, and I'm thinking like, how do I want to know like strategy, like how do I spend these sculptures? I worry I always do something inefficiently.
Yeah, no, for sure, and I'll probably put a video. I know the jumper video I put out talked a little bit about that towards the end, but I'll definitely be putting out something. And I'll probably have to get with some of the leads and maybe some of the officers to ask a few questions on some things that I may have just forgot or just don't currently know, so I can make sure I'm putting out something that's really well informed and something that's complete. Though I definitely will be putting something out before we get to Final Kingdom that kind of talks about, you know, what you can kind of do for that next month or maybe up to the next couple months to kind of prioritize and focus on.
Right. Yeah, because there's definitely some questions I have, and it's hard to type them up in the chat for everybody to chat about them. You know, so it's, if you had a workshop or like this, there'd be advantages there.
Yeah, for 100%. And what I will say is, you know, always feel comfortable to post something in jump questions. You know, even if it's something that's going to apply to Final Kingdom. You know, there's definitely a very good amount of experienced people here that I'm sure can give you, you know, the same answer that I would, or another for that matter. But even aside from that, I'll definitely be putting out some stuff, and we'll definitely be setting up some of those workshops once we get into Final Kingdom.
Okay.
Alrighty, gifts are going hard in voice chat. All right, guys, look, I should say guys and gals, that is it for me. I'm at 2.5 hours now. I'm going to